Hey everyone, welcome to Group B of the GSL Season 3 2023. We do have our first best of three here. Our first preliminary match, going to be Cure and Stats, starting off on Golden Aura. And I've actually forgotten who the other two players are, so we're going to figure that one out in the next series. But anyway, we do have Cure and Stats start things off. A rather potentially one-sided match. Unfortunately, as much as I would like to hype this up, Cure has, I think, literally the best EVP in the world. If not stats-wise, then certainly seems to when you look at him. Even when he doesn't manage to just crispy get the win ASAP, he does nonetheless end up pulling it back, or just making it look easy-peasy, when others would struggle after falling behind or whatever happens. You know, it doesn't necessarily go from minute 0 to minute 10 or whatever it is all perfect for Cure, but nonetheless it still feels like he's really, really, really good at the matchup. Whatever mistakes he may or may not be making, he forces the Protoss to make bigger ones. So that's generally what Cure does best, and then he has fantastic TVT and fantastic TVZ, and it's really one of the best players in the world. He also just recently got picked up by Team Liquid, so this GSL match happened before that was released, but that just got released a couple days ago, so pretty cool for him. Definitely a great pickup. We are watching a failure of a proxy racks happen right now, by the way, so definitely am noting that. It's just that it is not going to work out. Despite Cure's best efforts to try and get two SUVs repairing each other, and then building the barracks, Stats very insistently pulling his own probes to stop that from happening. It's the best way to do it, especially when you can almost guarantee such a significant block on the timing. Like, if you find them when it's 5 seconds into building, then they probably won't try to stop to get it finished, and you probably don't have to try very hard to stop it from being finished. But if it's like 70% or whatever this was, it finally gets canceled, then that is absolutely worth ensuring for the Protoss. That's a huge gap of time which the Terran player not only doesn't have a barracks to produce the Reaper, which is now significantly later, much less proxied, but you also delay any further technology from not having a barracks, right? Because it unleashes the rest of the tech tree. So makes a Terran a very uncomfortable place, and Stats even tries to capitalize on it, building a Zealot going across the map. Of course, a wall still does the trick. It does mean that Cure had a high ground command center, but he was more than aware of that, and possibly even already preparing to do that, even if his proxy racks, or racks is, if that was his plan, were to get up and running, just for safety's sake. Again, it's not that he looks like he's perfect from start to finish. He does sometimes make allowances, I guess, and you know, takes the Protoss threat seriously. He does go for high ground command centers. I love Blizzard because I'm doing a recording here and I don't have to be online, and yet BattleNet is apparently goofing in Asia. Great. Anyway, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't, you know, like the failed barracks, the command center on the high grounds, the Reaper not being able to go for any harassment or any scouting currently doesn't really feel all that problematic. It's something that Stats is trying to do to ensure that he gets the best start possible after finding that barracks, but I don't know. I still have a lot more faith in Cure's ability to win this game. So we have a Twilight Council on the way, have shield batteries coming down, pretty safe location too, not the pylon is particularly safe, but a robo attached to that as well. And Cure is just going to go into a 1-3, 1-1-3, I don't know how to say it, factory, and then 2 barracks, so going to delay that starport a significant amount, which means he probably won't be having Raven this game either, which does seem to kind of be getting less popular as we see TVP develop. We did have the change where the Ruby got in. Where the interference matrix has to be upgraded at this point, but it does seem like, you know, a lot of the players are pushing away from that. Whereas, I don't know, definitely pre-patch it felt like everyone was doing it, unless it was a Phoenix Colossus opener, in which case only the Koreans would really go for the Raven. Anyway, certainly not going to be doing so here, and the factory actually not even being used, only for hopscotch, fearing any type of 4-gate, which, if it was a 4-gate, only having a single Cyclone and like a handful of bio, now production is ramped up, but still, it would be a little complicated to defend, but it's definitely not a 4-gate. Cure actually didn't get really deep in here to see anything that Stats was doing. Didn't see the Twilight Council, didn't see the Robo, didn't see the third base. Has no Hellion that would also usually follow up a more standard TVP to get that secondary or even tertiary scout. In this case, it would really be the first one. But apparently it's not needed. It is forced to play a little bit safe. Missile turret is coming down. That lack of Raven does open you up to opportunities for the Protoss to DT rush you. Some are taking advantage of that, especially if they figure out that you aren't going for a starport, which is Observer is currently seeing. But yeah, obviously you would have already had to have decided to go into Dark Shrine at this point. If there was a Max Packs game where he literally scouted the lack of starport and went, you know what, DTs, and it worked out wonderfully. Scan does come down, get rid of the Observer. You don't want that tracking you the entire game. Stats is only 4 workers up. His third Nexus is now down, but not at all saturated. Robotics Bay is on the way, and overall it doesn't really feel like Kier took that much damage from his total failure of a proxy bear, because it really was. Again, if it's 10 seconds in, it's not even really a failure, even though it is technically like a thing that didn't work, but when it's 70% in, that's usually a bigger deal. But Kira has really managed to make this seem like no big deal. Strength of the wall, I suppose. Stats unable to aggress after destroying the barracks. Still had an engineering bay block to deal with as well. Kind of impacted that, I suppose. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like Stats had gotten the best benefits, despite the opener working out. Now ahead by 13 workers. That changed very quickly. But still, does he have the army now to contest with Cure, who has 7 Marauders? Decent number right there. Cyclone's still alive. Medevac's on the way. Upgrades finishing up as well. First Colossus will be out for Stats. The question is, will a second one? Actually, I think a second one will be out. Yeah. The second one should be fine. With 2 Colossus, I think you feel a lot more comfortable. Observer was replanted on the front lines too, and the Stalkers have been tracking the bio movement, so no surprises here. Stats does have shield batteries in both the natural and third, but nothing really covering this common area. And that would be the downside of the way that his safe natural shield battery has been placed. Some of the Protosses are placing the shield battery where the gateway is, actually, trying to compensate for this particular angle. Now, this is a bit of a problem. The Stalkers were not chasing the army. Of course, they can only do so much, and the Medevacs thus... Well, I guess the problem is really that they were kind of chasing the army. But you can't do it so much that you actually get on top of the Medevacs in the bio. But it looks like Cure is going to say, you know what? No, thanks. Not going to go to the main. Just kidding. No. I'm fine. Which I think is fine. The Stalkers and the single Colossus, as the second one had popped out and is now defending the third base, seems a lot better. Plus, now Cure has a pretty feisty army still alive on the right side, who's going to go after 7x4, actually, as well as an attack on the left side. Now, again, Stats has 2 Colossus, about to be on a third. He's managed to get a decent army together with both Colossus as well. So it's not like they're going to be overrun. Let's see how he deals with this multi-pronged pressure. Widowmine in the third base is not going to get a shot. And the Zealots clear up the rest of the drop in the third base. Natural now under attack. Third Colossus pops into it, protected by a shield battery, though. No fear there. And so far, Cure's not even really multi-pronged, actually. This just kind of backed off after killing the 2 buildings. Not really doing a whole lot. 7x score death can be significant, but in this case, I don't think it is. Stats quick to replace in that once he realized it was, in fact, going to be targeted down. So very brief interruption on Stalker Warpins, if that's even something that Stats really needs. 6 Stalkers are doing the trick so far, as far as helping against the drops. Probes are going down, 6 of them, in fact, and the 4th base was canceled, but Stats still in a good defensive position, as we know him. Upgrade's going to even up momentarily as well. Double Forge for the Protoss. It's up for 2-2 pretty quickly. Third base for Cure, now down location. Managed to bridge the gap of workers, since Stats has locked himself in on 3 bases, only for gas. Doesn't need the extra 6 workers that would usually go onto these gases. Which, I mean, I actually think that he should get that soon, but it looks like it'll just be transferred from the main anyway. But he is going to go into 2-2 and High Templars. So, gas. Gas will eventually be necessary. Right now, definitely not. Actually, rather zealot heavy. 23 zealots. That's going to explain some of the gas bank here. 3 Colossus, a Sentry, and then the 9 Stalkers, I guess now, improving from 6. Did not take up a whole lot of gas over the almost entire length of the game. Before, 4 gases. Obviously, the upgrades being really the most costly there. Now the High Templars come in, though, and there goes that gas bank. And so I do expect the gases now to come down. There we go. Yeah, exactly. So stats, evening up on the army supply, getting a little bit ahead on the 2-2. 4 bases, all types of set up and fairly well protected. Now, these charge lots can get dragged away from the protecting factor of the Nexus. They can get dragged and then they can get killed, especially I wouldn't mind, and then no longer able to protect the Nexus or the Colossus. Really the bigger deal, perhaps. That worries me a little bit. It is so Zealot heavy. 8 more Zealots getting warped in, but obviously on the offensive. Warp Prism going for an attack. Good SCV hold position, maximizing the potential of the reinforcements from the Terran. Nicely done, but still SCVs are going to go down. They're eventually pulled into the fight, so that's when they do start to sacrifice themselves. Scan of the 4th base reveals still a very solid Protoss setup. 2 Colossus, even a Guardian Shield, as stats realize that could be a target. And the protection of the overcharge as well, if necessary. So far, so good from stats. Really is defending multi-pronged pressure pretty well. Not really having such the harrowing 6-7 minute attack that used to exist with that Raven Interference Matrix. Something that Cure could have gotten to, of course, if he wanted to go for it. The upgrade is inexpensive and pretty quick as well, but yeah, not this game, of course. But Cure, kind of identifying that these attacks really aren't snowballing. They're not finding the big weakness in Stats' armor. Isn't really gung-ho to try and force the issue. Although now getting attacked himself is forced to retreat. Fortunately, there's a retreat down to the south. And those Zealots are being pulled away, microed against. Now 2-2 had finished for the Protoss. This was actually an ideal timing for Stats to push out like this. It's just that his army doesn't really have a lot of chase potential. Especially this army, which only has 3 Stalkers to its name. Charge lots have to catch up to the bio. Archons, little T-Rex arms. And the Colossus is just not quite fast enough. But the rest of the army of Cure out on the map, not back to home defending. Could get a little weird. Base trade could be ensuing at this point in time. Cure's army runs face first into a Disruptor. Decent split, though, and loses 2 Marauders. Is going to find the Robos. Robo now singular. And find that Disruptor, of course, as well. So yes, indeed. We got ourselves a little bit of a base trade. Upgrades are evened up here. Stats. Is he going to use a recall? Or when is he going to use the recall? Really, the most important question. Looks like a couple of Widowmines popped off. The Zealot number is already depleting drastically. Again, getting torn away from the main army. Actually, the Colossus walked back home. So that's, I don't know about this. This actually is very dangerous. 3 Colossus basically by their lonesome up against someone who still has a good number of Marauders, decent amount of medevac healing as well, and a couple of EMPs. Yeah, in fact, this is the whole army. And the 4 Marauders are a little bit weakened, but they do manage to trade out for that oh god, for the Colossus. Disruptor is going to go down. Got a decent hit before doing so. Supply still very, very close together. But once again, the Colossus not being protected, not being microed by the Warp Prism either, cannot handle even a small amount of Marauders, and now the Vikings realize that it's their time to shine. They could have been doing that the entire time, but it's better late than never. And Stats has lost a couple of really key units to his army. He's lost some reinforcements in the main base that were trying to collect themselves with the Disruptors, with the Colossus, and now his army supply is looking down in the dumps. Cure was able to actually reinforce back at home. A couple of Liberators kept his army on the other side of the map alive in a better way, I would say, than Stats did. Again, losing those Colossus like that was just such a bummer. And while Cure has a lower amount of workers, obviously command centers, orbitals specifically, can help make up for that, and he's about to grab Stats' very important 4th base next. Its entire mining base now gone. 3rd base next in Cure's sights as well. SCV's pulled because, you know, you're not really recovering at this point. Despite 2 orbitals living, you still don't have a lot of hope for the economic recovery. We're still in pretty much base race mode. Stats now down to protecting his 3rd base, his natural being rebuilt. He is going to go after the Terran army. A little bit dangerous, besides he has an opportunity. EMP is not really available. Grabs 1, goes looking for the next one. That one also goes down. Only 1 goes with an EMP. Does pop an Archon. Good save there from Stats. Picks up the Warp Prism, drags it back, and the Stalkers are here to play as well. Archons, though, getting demolished by the 2-2 bio, as well as the Liberators that did siege up, and that was not the engagement that Stats wanted. It was away from his shield battery as well. And that just as a whole was not really it. Cure able to take multiple battles in just better fashion than Stats during the panicky base trade. And unfortunately, that means that Stats is going to lose game number 1 in this best of 3. Cure As I said, it's not necessarily the cleanest, most oppressive TVP in the world start to finish. There's actually a lot of bumps in this guy's play a lot of the time, a lot of chances for the Protoss to actually bring it back or, of course, win. But then it just feels like when it is time to shine in TVP, here turns it on. So I guess, a lot of times it is just the battles themselves. He has really good control, but then also, I suppose, map control. Like, he just seems to always be set up well when it is necessary to win the game. So in this case, the base trade, he was set up better multiple times in a row. And Stats did make a couple of critical mistakes. Again, the Colossus being alone, but then not being microed by the Warp Prism, which was an open opportunity up until the Vikings appeared at the very last second. That was big. That was big, and that last fight also could have been in a more defensive position, although maybe he still doesn't win, of course, even with an overcharge. Not saying that would have been the difference maker, but I think it was kind of revealing more and more as we watched that base trade go down, that Stats was a little more of the panicked one, a little bit more of the hurried one, as he did reach out to try and take that battle, actually, which maybe he didn't have to be, but it is so difficult to tell in a base race. Still a fun TVP to start things off, and Stats definitely looked competitive against, again, I believe the world's best TVPer, so let's see if he can bring it back. Game 2 underway on Oceanborn. In the top left, it is Cure. Bottom right, it is Stats. So Stats unable to win out in the base trade. It is fairly difficult when Cure takes such great battles, and again, just seems to be able to eventually line up his ducks. It's not that he goes from start to finish having the best TVP, but when it matters, he gets those ducks in a row, and it certainly mattered in those base trade battles. It's also, I think, maybe a little bit more difficult for the Protoss in a base trade. I mean, it kind of depends on compositions. Obviously context in general is really important. Who initiates the base trade, who gets the solid start to, preparing for it, right? Because if the Protoss is the one that says, I'm desperate, I need to kind of initiate a base trade, and they have a Blinkstar to disrupt their army, but they can also add a Dark Shrine, then that could really help them. That's important context to know. And on the other hand, if the Terran realizes that they're going to be forced into a base trade, or they want to force a base trade, then popping out a handful of Liberators can be critical to saving your production. 4 Liberators on the main base ramp can be a wall the Protoss cannot break. So, it's definitely very context-based. I know the old saying is never base trade a Terran. I don't think that's been true for a very long time. If it does hold somewhere a little bit stronger, it might be TVP. But I would say that TVZ, I've been hand-waving that saying away for a very long time. But TVP can, just context is so important. And where the recall's available, if a recall is available, are Dark Templars available? Are they already on top of the production of the Terran versus now trying to kill a planetary, obviously, is a big wall for them. Yeah. But I will say that I felt like Stats didn't have the best plan. And so much of a base trade is how good of a plan you can form in those little microseconds that you're given. StarCraft 2 in general is a very fast game, of course, so that's always the case. Who can perform better under the pressure? But especially during a base trade or base race, that's extra pressure. It's even shorter amount of time. And by the way, some people say base race and base trade are, basically synonymous, but I've always considered base race to be the actual racing to kill each other's buildings, whereas base trade is kind of the literal trading of bases and perhaps production kill, but, it's more like a base trade leads to a base race, I guess. Or a base race might be the only goal of someone if they realize their army can't beat their opponent's army, but they could kill the last building. Anyway, this is a little bit awkward. Adept actually gets into the main base of Cure, so not only going to be doing some economic damage, despite not killing any SCVs so far, still SCVs being pulled off the line, also gets a complete scout. So you kind of already do a fair bit of scouting as soon as you see the reactor on top of the factory, but to be able to confirm that it's Hellions, not going to confirm it's in a Wood of Mines, to be fair, but then also confirm the starports back at home not being proxied. That is a good situation, no doubt about it. Kira made a mistake there. is able to kill an Adept, though, and overall looks like the trades work out better for them, but it's those non-unit factors that really matter so much for Stats right now, who should be still very much prepared to be dropped, but obviously the difference of being proxied or not is a significant amount of time you can have to prepare additional units and additional shield batteries a lot of the time as well. Now, shield batteries don't help against Widow Mines. We all know that. Just throwing it out there because it is going to be a Widow Mine drop. But considering that it could also be Hellions, you aren't quite sure you didn't get the follow-up scout. Sometimes those shield batteries do still come down. Not so for Stats, just one in the natural alongside a wall, so pretty protected against a simple Hellion drive-by. Having seen only 2 so far, might be figuring more and more it should be the Widow Mines in the main, and it's not like it's uncommon to do it. It really could be either one. Interference Matrix on the way, actually. Raven, gonna be able to grab maybe a Colossus or 2, if that's the way Stats plays this game. Which I would say usually it is, but first and foremost, does he lose too many probes to the Widow Mine drop? So far, so good. 1 probe for each Widow Mine. Relatively quick cleanup as well, I would say. No playing around with the burrow-unburrow action. This wasn't Drilling Claws, this was an Armory as well, so Stats handling this very well so far. Still continuing on with his macro as well, filling up his gases in the natural. And as I said, it should be Robotics Bay, and it is. Stats, but also most Protoss players right now going for those Colossus, rather than trying to play, for instance, a mass gateway style. Every once in a while you see it thrown out, especially by the likes of a hero. But it's definitely rarer than it was a year ago. And Stats has almost never been that guy. even when it was a totally valid thing to do, it was almost always, well, the defensive, the Shield of Ire, right? So he definitely still plays to that style, even after his military service, which, again, reminder, if you're kind of unaware of the timeline here, Stats has been back for a little while, but I believe didn't make it into a GSL through the qualifier once, so he's here now. But he has been back for a little while. It is still obviously a tremendous feat to come back from about 1.5 to 2 years of not playing, at least not playing every single day, and then trying to compete with the best. And again, Kira being one of the best TDPers in the world. So the fact that Stats has been able to do this and have a kind of harrowing base trade as well that really had the potential to go his way, although I think from pretty early on it was clear Kira was taking the better battles. It's a good sign for Stats fans and for Protoss fans who need another Protoss to cheer for. Unfortunately, the Widow Mines come back in. More Widow Mine harassment, more mining loss, but I think it actually died. Wait, let me double check. Yeah, okay, so the Minivac died actually, so that's not unfortunate at all for Stats. It's unfortunate for Kira. I would have loved to have had a third opportunity to go for the drop, and that time paired up with the push at the front. That's when it really gets potentially nasty. But not so. Now Stats only has to prepare for the front push. Now, I believe Stats Observer did get killed. Yeah, so it was able to see that there was a Raven. And that Raven could very well have an interference matrix. Not something that the Protoss inherently know. There's no graphical change once that upgrade finishes. But in this day and age, I would say if you bother to get a Raven, you should be bothering to get an interference matrix upgrade. It just seems like too powerful of a spell not to get, although in TVT I've kind of been seeing it, yeah, not necessarily research every single time. Oh no! Well, you don't even really need an interference matrix for this ideal setup, but the second Colossus is going to be taken out of the equation as the first one gets deleted. And, well, Stats is just going to be found out of position. Alright then, that's easy peasy lemon squeezy. The AI. I don't even think that was the AI's fault. Stats taking that forward position is expected and desired for the oh god, the pylon, oh Jesus, for the Protoss. Like, they need to kind of get ahead of the push to a certain degree, but getting way too far ahead, I would assume. I mean, this game's over. This game is 100% over, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and just like back up and see what the heck happened. Say, he pushes forward, right? You want to do this. You want to try and get at least some type of initiation going so that they either pop the interference and then you can run away, or they pop a stim and you can run away, maybe get some damage on the Marines, whatever it is. But you know what I think it is? If we watch Stats Vision... Well, that Observer sees a fairly feisty army. Okay, never mind. Never mind, my first guess is wrong. I thought he was underappreciating how much army there really was, but that's not really the issue. And then he saw the Raven too, so you know that, like, you know, it's likely, I guess, that the, the Colossus would be in danger, but, you know, also the extended thermal lance being so far away, I wonder if that could have started earlier. Would that have been a big enough difference? I don't know. But the Zealots missing is kind of the biggest problem. And then I think the secondary problem, or maybe vice versa, is that the Protoss army was too far forward without getting any stronger. So I guess his thinking maybe was that the entire army... Oh! He might have been thinking that the tank was going to siege. I'm really trying to figure this one out. So the 4 Zealots wouldn't necessarily have stopped the Colossus from dying, but obviously they stopped to attack while this army runs backwards. The Zealots are their sacrifices. And that's okay. That's kind of their job. But they're not even here, so I'm wondering if he thought the tank was going to siege because he was posturing, but then Cure was, you know, not going to be intimidated by that. So the Zealots are put up here because they're going to go for a back attack. Yeah, 4 Zealots, I mean, literally the body blocking aspect of the Zealots is a huge contribution here. And then the Stalkers blink backwards because that's usually what they would do. But then in that case, they probably also needed to be the literal body blockers. The Sentry was late to the force fields, but not really so much late as it was there was no ideal force fields anyway. This area was so big that, you know, 2 force fields hardly contribute. This was the closest that they could to contributing, and it still wasn't enough. Yeah. It is a very bummer game, too, actually. Which, again, like 100% stats did die. I mean, just to double check, we didn't have any, like, an amazing comeback, did we? Nah, no, not Cure 1. Yeah. No, that was very unfortunate. Not the best showing in that game number 2. Game 1 had a lot of potential, like I said, for stats, and just kind of the idea that, you know, he did play well, so maybe the rest of this best of 3, he could get a jab in, but nope, gets demolished in game 2. Cure moves on to the winner's match, and now we get to see who the other 2 players were, because I definitely forgot, so let's get into it. Yes, another TVP. In the top left of Oceanborn, it is Nightmare, and in the bottom right, it is Bunny. Got it. Yeah, so 2 Protosses, 2 Terrans in Group B. The 2 Protosses coming in as the underdogs. And no, not just because they're Protoss. No, I mean, they just are underdogs. You know, if... let's say we all agree that TVP is perfectly balanced. They still would be the underdogs. Because Nightmare hasn't put up many results. He's put up some surprising results for someone who hasn't put up results, you know, and that doesn't beat Bunny and Cure. He's gone through lower bracket runs against really great players, and he didn't expect that. He's defeated some standout stars in his GSL, so that there was a bit of shock and awe. But, you know, they were only shocks and all because Nightmare isn't necessarily considered one of the best. But he hasn't really put up the results, certainly at a consistent rate that we would say that he's favored to win any of his GSL groups, actually. Any of these groups, I don't think he'd be favored to win. But then, stats, obviously a bigger name, a lot more weight to that name, has just recently come back from the military. Recently being like last year, to be fair, so recently isn't really... It's doing a lot of work. But anyway, the point is, like, that's still trying to beat people who have not gone to the military, been playing every single day, who haven't had that lapse of little metagame knowledge, certainly. Not that there's been a tremendous amount of changes in this matchup, but certainly the mechanical practice over and over and over again. And even if Stats hadn't gone to the military, I certainly think that Cure still would have been favored, because, again, his matchup TVP is just so spectacular. And then Bunny would still have a really good chance, even against prime stats, because Bunny can be really aggressive and can really throw off a guy who's, you know, going to be 99% of the time defensive. But then you add in that little bit of non-practice military forces in you. And yeah, I think Bunny and Cure, definite favorites. Nightmare can be tricky, because if I can give Bunny that credit, should he be facing the 2018 stats, I have to give Nightmare some credit here. He can be tricky. His initial foray into GSL was actually years ago, where he did a DT rush at a time where no one was doing DT Blink. Sorry, DT Blink Rush. Now it's well, still not very common. It's still not done. But anyway, that's where he made an appearance. That's where he first made his name, was against Gumiho and Cactus Valley. I'm never going to forget it. It's in my brain forever for some reason. But he is not really all that cheesy, despite being kind of first and foremost known for that. He can be a great Protoss. He can really strike when the iron's hot and look like a dominant Protoss, I would say, in a couple of best of ones especially. But especially in a best of 3, GSL, kind of all together, his performance the last 2 years, yeah, I'm not particularly hopeful. We'll see what happens. Maybe he's coming in as the Protoss hope this year. Creator. Already doing pretty well, though. I think he's kind of what we're all looking at from Group A. But Bunny's going to go for a very obnoxious opener. He's going to go into Wood of Mines with an Armory. So Nightmare going into a pretty standard opener. He's got Blink on the way. Actually, I'm sorry, that wasn't standard. This was second Gateway, then Twilight Council. With a Sentry opener. Alright, this is going to be a little bit awkward then. So Blink is going to be nowhere done. Not that it would necessarily be completed before the first drop. No, right? Well, typical Wood of Mine drop it wouldn't be, unless it was chronoed multiple times. But yeah, we'll see. But the second Gateway, the Sentry, little tickler, not exactly helpful when it comes to DPS. The Sentry Hallucination is certainly helpful when it comes to scouting, and that's why you would do it. The 2 gateways do give you a modest amount of actual warp-ins as well, it's just that the units you're warping in aren't as cool. Don't get as much credit. That's the, Phoenix did scout everything? Oh my god, it did not. Oh my god, it did not. Oh my god, it did not. Oh, geez Louise. Wow, that hallucination was a failure. They didn't see the armory, they didn't see the tech lab. All I saw was a 111. Oh, no. Nightmare needs a robo, my dude. The third Nexus comes down before that, which is just a little bit of a greedy play on his part. You know, we just saw Stats doing some of the most basic TV, or PVT, I guess, in his case, builds, and if he was doing that, his robo would be done. Alright? Yeah, so now it's only just beginning. Oh, God. Oh, jeez. Oh, Lord. Julian Claus finishes up as well, and as I said, Blink not close to being done. What am I, number 1? Oh, my God! It's such a good shot. Medivac does die. Nightmare loses 8 probes, and is going to have the delay on the mining in a couple of seconds. Oh, boy. I mean, hopefully only a delay in the mining. Hopefully this doesn't pop off again. Oh, a Secret Command Center as well. Oh, Bunny is pulling out all the stops, man. I'm actually a little surprised by this, because I consider Bunny so favored in this matchup. I would think that he would hold on to this type of build and strategy in his back pocket against one of the most fearsome Protosses. Like the hero, I guess. But nope, bring it out against Nightmare. It is so far just the probe economic mining losses, but I'm worried. I am worried. The Observer's going to be out to deal with the natural Wood of Mines, but there's a Medivac heading into the main. Oh, this is awkward. Oh, he doesn't see it. Oh my god. Oh my god. No, no. Oh no. Yep, so that's going to be heading into the main. And natural's cleaned up. Main base. It's so fast. Okay, only gets 1 probe. Only 1 probe there, only 1 probe here. Second Wood of Mine drop, not nearly as successful, as it also gets gunned down. Finally, things turn around a little bit for Nightmare, who, by the way, had a faster third base. So, as much as that delayed his robo, and that was a little concerning, his third Nexus is done. It's pumping out 3 probes at a time. That's pretty good stuff to have, while your opponent is, you know, purely harassing you. Because theoretically, if you play this well, you don't have to take any further damage. You pull the probes fast enough, which is the critical part. Then you aren't going to take any more damage, but you're still producing all of this economy and not being killed. You don't get your head cut off for it. But 6 more probes do still end up going down. Just so many Wood of Mines to try and avoid boosted and burrowing as fast as they are. And that means that Nightmare is still down by 5. So, yeah, Bunny doesn't have his complete main army that's really going to punch Nightmare in the face, but his jabs are doing work. Unfortunately. For the Protoss fans out there. They're also doing a little bit of scouting, too, which I think is very worth noting. Bunny seeing the amount of gateways coming down, the lack of gases in the natural as well, so he knows that his opponent is going into a more mass gateway style, blink stalkers and charge lots, may be able to afford a couple of Archons, although that would be a question of the gases in the natural, which we see are coming down, Templar Archives is coming down, but Bunny wouldn't exactly know. But either way, it's a fearsome composition to be out on the map against. If it is going to be mass charge lots, then you don't really be on the map unless you know you're going to win. If it's going to include a couple less charge lots, but then a couple more Archons, still same scenario. You have to be very careful with how you push out against it. And then with this composition style, you do also get some faster expansions, which in this case help Nightmare scout that perhaps final Widowmine drop. I guess the Observer was also doing it, which Bunny picked up on faster than I did, scans and deletes it. Third CC is on the way, but it's actually the fourth CC. Don't forget, third CC from Bunny in the top right. This entire time, Nightmare actually not going for the additional Archons add into a very pumped up gateway count composition, but actually going into Storm. So that is going to, I mean, it's going to kind of slow down his composition to a certain extent. If this was pure charge lot, you know, this army is already being enveloped. There is like 30 charge lots waiting already without those additional gases in the Temple Archives and the Storm. But now clearly you got your goal to get to Storm. It's still a decent amount of charge lots. This Nightmare actually starts warping in as well. But the Storm is not yet done. 3, 2, 1. Okay, now it's ready to go. Widowmines are burrowed. Blink forward aggressively. Widowmine number 1 pops off quite well. And so far, the Storm just can't get in range of the damn Terran army. Some reinforcements will get picked off, kind of AI'd awkwardly there. But Bunny saves the majority of his forces with that +1 attack also working wonders against the unupgraded Zealots. So not only did they get attacked by a Widowmine, the splash is pretty huge, but then also anytime they're not being supported, basically. There's no Storm to support the charge lots. This Terran army wrecks them. And that's a significant problem for Nightmare, who is really supposed to have his own power spike a little bit faster, I would say. A little bit faster and a little bit more of a surprise as well. If Bunny had just, you know, ran up right in the face of a couple of Storms, that would be a different story. But we're kind of missing both of those things. And now Nightmare is in a very bad position. 4 bases, yes, seems great, but really the economy's never been that much better than Bunny. Thanks to some of the Widowmine drops than Bunny's hidden base. And the only thing that really Nightmare has going for him is the fact that the Storms still aren't being countered by EMP, but that is about to change. And as much as that is a usual boon to a Storm-based player, the amount of Terran army is just too great, especially with the upgrade. Bunny making sure he's never all stacked up either, had his army pulled this way and that. Nightmare actually blinking forward. Gonna blame the AI on that one. That was awkward, but I don't think it really changes the course of this game. Nightmare needs something sturdier than just a couple of Hail Mary Storms, which, okay, those are pretty good to win this game. Now with the EMPs coming out, especially, +1 armor on the way, +1 attack, actually, for Nightmare. But it's not gonna help his Zealots bridge the gap against such a big, fearsome Terran army that has EMPs both for the Storm as well as for the charge lots. Speaking of the Storm, oh, most of the Storms get EMP'd. No Storms on the north side by the looks of things, and the War Prism still not ferrying any of them around. Good enough medevac count to heal up most of this bio, and this is game over for Nightmare. No. Never really got going. Never really got pumping, I would say. The Widowmine drops, dealing a, I wouldn't say, like, significant amount of damage. I should give them a little bit too much credit. I would say more was a combination of the damage that they did, which was too much. The pull away on the first Widowmine was too late. But then also the style in which Nightmare wanted to play. In my experience, watching professional players, because my own gameplay sucks, it does seem to be that if the Protoss is not going to have an ideal economic start, then the best course of action for them to play out is one of those more defensive 3-base Colossus styles. The getting kind of like cut at the knees before you really get the ball rolling as you try to go into mass gateway, I think is just so much more difficult than if you're cut a little bit going into Colossus. I think that's something that you can recover from, but the mass charge lot play, the quick in a storm with a lot of heavy gateway emphasis, if you're cut early on in the economy, I think is very difficult to recover from. And the one thing you do have in that scenario is that you have that one power spike where you have a tremendous amount of charge lots or the surprise storm, and then the Terran falls into your trap. before they've outgrown you, you had that momentary power spike, and that just didn't happen here. So, yeah, kind of a, you know, combination of things obviously leading to a StarCraft loss, but that's going to be it. That is going to be it. Nightmare not able to do any better against his Terran opponent so far. Let's see if that changes in Game 2. Game 2 is going to be on Solaris, top right Bunny, bottom left Nightmare. Nightmare trying some Mass Gateway play, but getting interrupted consistently by Widowmine drops kind of hurt his chances. And then Bunny not falling into the trap of engaging into unknown territory, unknown storms, unknown charge lot amounts. Just played out the little gap of time where you don't have EMPs against Storm. Played out very well. I think he would have had to play it almost purposefully weak to those Storms to actually lose, though, because his army supply was just so great. He would have had to have literally balled up all of his army and then bathed in the Storm. I think for Nightmare to have a true chance, which, you know, you just don't expect the professional Terrans to do. More than likely to happen amongst the lower leagues. A Nightmare is going to go back to a little bit of cheese. Again, I wouldn't say that he's really the cheesiest, despite his burst onto the scene being one of the cheesiest things anyone's ever done. But he can definitely bring this out in a way that maybe a stats wouldn't normally, that's for sure. And it is going to be a double gateway opener, one in proxy. Bunny is not going to be scouting this at least anytime soon. Well, see what the SV does, actually. The probe obviously should not lead the SCV. That would be totally on Nightmare if that were the case. Nah, no. Bunny's just completely captivated by trying to kill this probe. Not going to go for any SCV scout. Trying to get his 1-Rex expand underway. Looks like he's going to go into a Marine, then Reactor, possibly. He might add a Reaper after this. If he adds a Reaper, it's a little bit more firepower. Yeah, and it is a Reaper. Okay, so that's a little bit better. But then you do have a delay on your factory, so it's, you know, well, I guess Reactor also would delay it, to be fair. Well, 1 Marine, 1 Reaper. Totally fine. Totally fine against the first Zealot. Not as fine against the double Adepts, or even double Soccer, actually, that Nightmare's going to go for. This could get very dangerous very quickly. Bunny, not particularly quick to a bunker, if he even is going to get one. Kind of looks like he's not even going to bother. Yeah, it doesn't... well, now the SCV is in position. So to have a bunker against the Adept harassment, totally great. And if it was an Adept in a totally normal opener, it'd be coming across the map right now, so that would time out pretty much perfectly. But there's a proxy gateway, so a Stalker already here. Marine gets taken down, Reaper running for its life. SCV's pulled, lickety-split, though. So far, one of the best reactions you can have as a Terran player to the surprise proxy gateway. Surrounded as well, 2 SCVs go down. Still not enough damage from the Protoss player to make up for the delay on their Nexus. Let's see if any more SCVs go down. Here we go, 4, maybe a 5. Yes, 5 SCVs, but the bunker does complete, and that would have been more ideal to stall out. If you can stall the bunker and stall the command center, kill both those SCVs, and then the Terran player is a little bit late to SCV pulling, and messes up the SCV swap, you know, one dies, one gets put back in the bunker, then that's when this could really snowball. But Bunny really did react about as fast as possible to an unknown strategy, and made sure to micro well enough that his bunker would actually complete. Command center SCV didn't seem to ever be under fire, unless I missed something. So, you know, this wasn't even really that big of an interruption, actually, on Bunny's build. A lot of SCVs were pulled, of course, but with the command center still having the crucial SCV building it, that's not really the biggest interruption. Cyclone's gonna grab 1 Stalker as well, maybe grab a second. It might die for it, but 2 for 1, you would take that. And that is 2 for 1, especially as the Cyclone is cheaper. Same cost as the Stalker, actually. Second Cyclone on the way. Faster to produce without that tech lab. Stronger defense in the early game. Why do they do this? No one will ever know. But they did. And, well, in general, Nightmare wasn't going to do very much. Whether that was an old Cyclone or a new Cyclone, to be fair. So this is over. Nightmare did not get the damage he wanted from the opener. His own Nexus significantly delayed to produce second gateway as well as the actual units you produce from it. Only now getting to his own natural saturation. Meanwhile, Bunny been calmly producing SCVs and muling on 2 orbitals for a while. Reaper comes in for further delay on the economy of Nightmare. And this is truly a Nightmare scenario. Nightmare best of 3. Not looking so hot for the Protosses in Group B. I didn't mean to rhyme, but there it is. 2 probes alongside the denied mining time. This is just so much value out of this Reaper, who also helped to defend the early game. Gateway does get destroyed. Don't want to leave that up for any further shenanigans. And Nightmare does now have some time to recover. You know, Stim's not going to be down anytime soon. Although, I was going to say 2 Cyclones, 8 Marines, and a Medevac. That actually could go across the map. Alright, hold on. But Nightmare really does need to play this well. 2 Cyclones have a lot of micro potential. Medevac flies on in. It's going to get gunned down! Oh, no! Well, that was a big turnaround. Okay, so Nightmare has minutes before Stim is done. Back to what I was talking about. Yeah, you're gonna wish that wasn't on live TV, you know what I mean? Like, that was pretty embarrassing there from Bunny, who just did not think the Stalkers would be so aggressively placed, I guess. You know, they didn't have Blink until just now, so if Bunny was trying to read into that and thinking, okay, he has to play defensive, well, he was wrong. But you know, as terrible as that looked, because it was all in like a 2-second span, immediate deletion of the Terran army, that still doesn't really make up for what Nightmare didn't do. Nightmare still hit his own economy a tremendous amount and still has not recovered in that department, and was only recovering the army amounts when he did that. And not even taking a tremendous leap in that army either, which could also be a play here. If you suddenly kill every unit of your opponent and you have 10 Stalkers, not just the 4 that he had, well, a counterattack is huge. But unfortunately for Nightmare, the 4-gate that he was going into is just appearing too late. So it's still fantastic he didn't get the snowball on him. He did delete the Cyclones and the Medevac and the Marines. The 4-gate might still be ending up too late. Bunker is going to get repaired. It was a good snipe on the tank. Some good Stalker micro as well, but the second tank is already out. Enough Marines to help out here, and the SCVs being pulled in aren't really sacrificing too many of their lives. 2 of them go down, but 3 probes just went down, so I guess the Reaper, I'm going to go ahead and guess that guy's just a baller. Really deserving of a... what is it? Medal of Honor? Purple Heart? Whatever it is when they die. Sorry to all the veterans out there. We're just shaking their head at me. Oh, geez. Raven gets destroyed. So Bunny's definitely mishandling the follow-up. This could have been a much cleaner game for Bunny. But it's still not making up for what Nightmare was unable to do with his proxy gateway. And now Bunny is kind of, I think, officially bridged the gap here. 2 tanks, really a solid place against a 4-gate. A 3rd, or rather 4th tank, really, not on the way. Is a little dangerous to play if they're going to continue committing. And that's exactly what Nightmare is doing. He warps in some Zealots, but they are not charged lots, nowhere close, just thinking he has an opportunity to drop them on top of the tanks and see if that actually works. Starport under fire as well. Here come the Zealots. Marines jump on top of the Stalkers, a chase backwards. Tank is gonna go down. No! It doesn't go down there. Nice save from Bunny, who is now gonna be under attack in his natural and his main base. Things are getting a little bit weird, to be honest. 19 SCVs do go down, and the Stalkers, a lot of them, will recall out. That's 13 Stalkers dead, 27 SCVs dead. That might have been enough damage there for Nightmare. I don't think Bunny really should have let his SCVs stay in the main base. If he had pulled them into the natural, I think he only loses like 10 SCVs, but... alright. Let's see how this goes. Stalker's back on the front, trying to chip away at the Marines that are stimmed up, injured. Medevac's out with a whole lot of juice. This is a good play from Nightmare. But here we go from Bunny. He's pulling the SCVs. Oh, those are SCVs coming with that lone tank. Scan ahead reveals a shield battery just finishing, but in a very precarious scenario. Force field to buy some time is the least of what Nightmare can do here. Another force field will be slapped down, and they'll buy even more time. Force field, force field, force field. A couple Zealots. Nope, you can't afford that. Force field actually misses. I'm not sure that really matters so much, but still. Oh, Zealots in the main base back at home. That Warperson wasn't taken care of. More SCVs go down. And now it is completely all in. Bunny really messing up the great start that he had. Now desperately trying to win game 2. Nightmare loses his shield battery, but he has another one of the back lines. That could be huge. No shield battery, however. Or sorry, no, freak, no shield. Guardian shield, there we go, Jesus. There's no Guardian shield. Used on the force fields. The Guardian shield would be so helpful against the Marines. Obviously not so much against the tanks. Now there's 3 of them on the front lines. Cyber Export does go down. No more Stalkers, no more Sentries. High Templar is trying to come in here for the Archon, and the Archon could be huge. Only 2 medevacs actually doing any amount of healing. The 3 tanks is so much to deal with in this scenario. The charge lots can't get on the backside. Well, they could actually. This War Prism might want to pick up the charge lots over here and come back. He just needs all hands on deck. But especially if the Zealots come back and either bomb on top of the tanks or just come in, you know, walk-in style. Either way, I think it'd be really helpful, but they're not doing it. And Nightmare is trying to take the engagement, realizing it won't work, backs away. Oh, it's so awkward. It is so awkward. Probe's getting massacred, but that was a given. Tanks continuing to siege chop. Protoss army's been corralled in the back. One force field trying to help out. Stalkers blink up. But the Sentries will be left alone, and again, lacking that Guardian shield. It'd be so helpful! No! They get sniped! Oh, there's a couple of things that Nightmare could have done here. Oh, there's actually more than a couple, to be honest. Nightmare almost brought this game back. But I don't know. Bunny has that +1 attack, also really been working wonders. He doesn't care about his home base, obviously. Those Zealots have been wasted over there for about a minute. And Bunny has his SCV probably on hold position to do a little body blocking for the tanks. The Marines are getting slowly healed up. Every little regen there from the medevac helping out. 3 Archons is a good amount to have. They're going to get focus fire by the tanks pretty much immediately. SCVs get into the fight. Marines back away to the tanks. One tank on the low ground going to help out a lot as well. There's the target fire. Charges coming in the backside too. Is this going to be enough? Archon's going to get popped. The third one not even attacking. That was on move command. I'm not even sure what I was trying to do, but now it's Marines against just a handful of Zealots. They get deleted. Stalkers technically outrange, but it was Stim involved. There's only so much that the Stalkers can do. Oh no, down to the wire, down to 9 supply there for Nightmare before he has to tap out. He almost brought that back though. 100%. He almost brought that back. Like, he was in the gutter economically. His 4-gate looked like it was a little too late to actually do the work that it needed. But then the split of the Warp Prism and the Stalkers really did catch Bunny in a funny position. Bunny didn't handle that probably as well as he could have, but it was a weird one. So then he's forced to all in. And then if Nightmare had... I mean, the second force field really is tricky. The second force field instead of a Guardian Shield is really tricky. Okay, so let's say he has second force field, but then he pulls back and he ends up recalling those sentries earlier. He saves the sentries. He has the Archons. He doesn't take that awkward kind of half battle where he takes tank shots. The Zealots on the Warp Prism come back, either by recall or by just coming back home. I think that is the huge difference maker. That's the biggest difference maker. Those were 6 Zealots, I believe, in a Warp Prism that could have microed the Archons. Like, that would have been huge. But that was obviously a very difficult game to play for both sides. And unfortunately, Nightmare did not play that as well as he could. So Bunny will in fact take the 2-0, and now it's going to be a TVT in the winners and a PvP in the losers. Let's get into it. The winners match is going to be between Cure and Bunny. Starting off on hard layered. Cure able to defeat stats. Bunny barely 2-0ing Nightmare. And quite the... Well, I guess it was a base trade, but... The majority of the armies weren't on either sides of the map, I guess. The opposite sides, so... Base trade, sure. Down to the wire, definitely. But now it's TVT. Now, Cure is the second best TVTer in the world. It feels like he should be first, but then Maru not only is a little bit better against him in general, like the stats prove that, but seems to have a clutch factor that Cure is missing when it comes to specifically Cure versus Maru. So basically, Cure is the best TVTer if he's not facing Maru. I think. Yeah. It's a little bold to say, because Maru has all that history, but honestly, and this is disregarding the fact that Maru just lost, if you watched Group A, Maru has not looked as dominant in his TVT. or as dominant in general, I suppose. He had his dominating years, actually. No doubt about that. But Cure was hounding him for the last year plus, I want to say. Hounding him. Constantly almost beating him. And then just tripping at the finish line. Or Maru forcing him to trip at the finish line, whatever it is. And then Maru also got a little bit worse against Clem. Gamers 8. And just, just now, just lost GSL group. Not because of TVT, but still. So what I'm trying to say is that Cure basically is the favorite to win here. He's actually the favorite to win GSL now that Maru is gone. So Bunny's going to be in potentially a lot of trouble. Now, it is a new kind of TVT. The Raven being changed adds a new question to the matchup. Do I get the Raven? Do I get the Interference Matrix? Most players are, but some players aren't. I think we've seen even more like medevac drop openers than we were seeing prior to the patch. They were pretty common, but now they're even more common. But then the Cyclone, obviously also changing things. We don't usually see a big emphasis on the Cyclones in this matchup because they are still vulnerable, still glass cannons. But they do change some of the timings, and they do change some of the openers' effectiveness, and in this case, I guess you're going to see Cure actually use them. Like, use them. Reactored Cyclones coming out right now. Now, I'm not sure if this is really going to work. I, myself, find Cyclones in TVT to be, less than impressive, like an actual Cyclone play. There are times where, especially if you aren't professional, you'll get into a Cyclone versus Cyclone lock trap, almost like a finger trap, where you're just like, well, I can't really stop, and you can't really stop, and this is the stupidest thing I've ever played. But it doesn't usually happen in pro games. Cure is absolutely gunning for Cyclone-based play. Bunny doing something a lot more usual to Cyclone medevac drop. That's been happening quite a bit. But Cure is still going for Cyclones. He is going to stop at 4. But 1 is still rather standard. 2, particularly for this drop, sure. But 3, 4, not usually. Not usually. Let's see how it works out. Cure is moving out on the map at the same time that Bunny is. Cure has a massive amount of micro potential. Bunny's got the high ground, or does he? Oh, the Reaper just tanked one of the lock-ons. The lock-on changes so quickly, though, with these new Cyclones. That's not necessarily what's most important. It just simply was 4 Cyclones versus 2, and then a smattering of miscellaneous units that don't necessarily size up to the remaining Cyclones. These Cyclones are going to continue being adventurous, locking onto the Marines. Bunny, uncertain how to handle the scenario. It's an uncommon one. His Marines not having time to be healed as the medevac's too busy picking up and dropping. And these Cyclones are going to get some serious work done. You do not usually see Terrans having to individually micro Marines. Marauders, sure, all the time, but Marines? Not usually. Those 2 Cyclones are eventually going to leave, both at red health, 3 kills on one, 9 kills on the other. Significant amount of medevac drain, but obviously just completely shutting down Bunny's opener is the most important thing there. Shutting the opener down and getting a good trade on the army so that Bunny can't just immediately come over and start counterattacking. The 2 Cyclones being saved means that if Bunny was thinking, okay, I can still go and medevac drop, he'd be doing it in a very dangerous way. So yeah, complete shutdown of Bunny's opener. I feel like the Cyclones aren't always going to go like that, though. I feel like this is a highlight moment. This is a no shit. Our Cyclone's good, but I don't know. I don't know if that's actually the case. Interference Matrix upgrade for both players on the way. 3rd CC as well. Cure has taken a single SCV lead. Nothing tremendous. But he is faster to the stim. A little bit slower to the barracks. Kind of like just the little things that add up to put both players in a relatively similar position. The biggest difference right now, Cure has a little bit more army supply. Catches a medevac that was going to go scout/fake anyway. It is going to try and buy as much time or even successfully hide off to the right side. Does Cure decide to go after it? Yes, he will. I'll be chasing. Cyclone to catch it if it actually goes to the left. Some Marines Trying to catch it. It goes to the right. Vikings are definitely going to catch it. Bunny scans. He's going to see 2 barracks added on, sure, but he's going to see the Vikings pop out. Well, you know what? You already kind of assume those are Vikings, actually. It's clearly not a fast bio player. So if the starport still has a reactor and is using it at this point in time, it's Vikings. But geez, Vikings obviously just revealed himself as well, and Bunny now knows that he might be in trouble as far as the air goes. He has less Vikings than his opponents, having stopped off on that medevac first and then building not just 2 Ravens of his own, but 3. But that is now something that he has. The benefit, 3 Ravens is a lot of firepower. 4 tanks to 4. Defender's advantage for Bunny. Stim will finish up for Cure in about 20 seconds. But it's always a tougher decision to use it in this type of scenario. I'm not sure he will. Oh, the Ravens of Bunny need to be paying attention. Interference switches do go down. Bunny's 2 tanks taken out of the equation. Ditto for Cure. But Cure lands the Vikings to help out the concave that he has set up right now. Now pops the stim as well. It just means that his Marines are getting 1 shot, so that didn't actually work out. But the concave that Cure got there for that attack was significant, and in fact is the reason that he kind of won this attack as well. And now we have the very awkward chase of the lone Viking against the 2 Ravens, both of them on very low health. Now it's the Viking versus Viking war, which the mass SCV repair is going to win for Bunny. But the Ravens! Oh, the Ravens didn't get repaired fast enough. The weak one does go down. And Cure not forced to leave his position. Still has a pseudo contain, very much pseudo. It's going to get the advantage of this high ground. Bunny not paying attention is going to unsiege his tank fast enough. Cure is continuing to rally forward as he gets another tank potentially. Great interference matrix. Bunny's Raven, I think, was getting repaired up. Didn't have the same opportunity to get out in the front lines, and that is another tank killed. Cure inching his way forward to victory at this point. Just 30 seconds ago, the army supplies were very close. Bunny was about to complete all of his upgrades as well. But he just does not have the army at this point. And now we have the tanks protecting his 3rd. And that is under fire. Forced to pull some SCVs, try and help out here, but that will not be enough. Cure. A game won by inches. Centimeters, perhaps. He did gain control from the get-go by completely taking Bunny's opener off the table. Absolutely true. But then when it came down to the real battles, the real action figures going up against each other, there was a decent chance for Bunny, too. But I think at the end of the day, him trying to protect his 3rd in the map setup that Hard Lead has was too difficult. The concave for Cure, gotten, especially as he landed those Vikings as well, was a little too significant. And then Bunny losing a 3rd tank to just being out high grounded, and then a 4th to the interference matrix in Cure's pocket. I mean, that's the 3rd tank I felt like was really the snowball. The real, like, oh, okay, he's probably dead. Gotcha. Cure is pretty freaking good at TVT, and so he takes the 1-0 lead, and now looks to lead on to game 2, possibly getting into the round of 8 first and foremost. We move on to Oceanborn. In the bottom right, it is Cure. Top left, it is Bunny. A winner's match here. Should Bunny lose this game as well, he will still have a chance to battle it out against one of the 2 Protosses, either Stats or Nightmare, both of which I believe he is favored against. He already took down Nightmare very convincingly in the first game. Second game was a little bit more clutch. But, so that means I think he would win if Nightmare is the rematch. Against Stats, I do think it would be a little more contested. If Stats can play like he did in game 1 versus Cure, I don't think Bunny is as good in the matchup as Cure is. But he's still pretty good, and he's also kind of different, which might actually work better against Stats for all I know, but we'll see. The PvP will be played out after this best of 3 concludes. The Cure taking the driver's seat in the last game, going for the control of the game overall by having the Cyclones to start off with. That I think could really go poorly quickly, though. I just really want to emphasize that, because the 4 Cyclones have a lot of micro potential, they have a lot of damage potential, but they are glass cannons. If they're caught out of position, if they're caught, you know, like AI, and then Bunny's drop actually catches 2 out of 4 of them, and another, like, it can get weird. But in that scenario, it really worked out almost ideally there for Cure. able to micro as much as he was able to. And so he took control of the game, and then he was able to just kind of push his leads inch by inch until Bunny was forced to fold. That's likely to happen even in game 2, just because Cure is so good at TVT. Bunny, not that he's bad at TVT, but I would say some of his highlights come from a more aggressive stance. If he has control over the TVT from the get-go like he wanted to in the first map, then I give him a little bit more chance, but then Cure's also very good playing the defensive, slow comeback style that Maru's most well known for. So there's no guaranteed path to success. I couldn't go up to Bunny and be like, hey champ, do this strategy. No, Cure's probably better in every department. And TVT is certainly a very skill-based matchup. Some people out there might say, lol, you know, Doom drops, make it a coin flip matchup, but not usually in professional TVT. Bunny playing a little bit careful. Make sure you're grabbing a bunker in TVT. It does depend on what your build is. In this case, it is a 1 Reaper, 1 Marine opener, so Bunny very light on the early game units. Could be vulnerable to even the 2 Reapers of his opponent, as seen right here, right now. 2 Reapers, tackle 1. That's math. The Marine had to be a part of it, but unfortunately was not, and you can see that it gets very awkward very quickly. Yeah. Fortunately, Bunny did not lose the Reaper. If he had straight up lost the Reaper, that's 2 or 3 SCVs killed right there. No problem. No problem. It still might be, actually, as the Hellion of Cure comes in to help out the Reapers. The bunker wasn't actually full until the Reaper hopped in, so still 2 SCVs, but again, the Reaper is not alive. This is added up maybe to 4 or 5 SCVs, and the Hellion might not even be enough to defend. It's an actual snowball. It is an actual snowball to death. No doubt the first 3 minutes of TVT can be precarious, even amongst the best players in the world, depending on what they open with. And in this case, Bunny going for a 1x expand, Reaper and Marine, that's it. There is that gap of time where he has a significantly lower army power. But then that time does pass, you know, in grand context of things fairly quickly. And he gets to his production, he gets to his factory, he gets to a safe point. And he does usually, ideally, anyway, get to a higher SCV count, but really this is one of the reasons the factory expand has been pushed to the forefront of TVT. Probably 80% of TVTs are factory expand. It's because it's almost guaranteed to get the damage necessary to tie up the game. 2 SCVs was all it took. And they're tied up, so. Almost guaranteed, not always. Interference Matrix upgrade on the way for Cure. Bunny so far not gonna get it. Seems very intentional. 50 gas, 50 gas, 50 gas, 50 gas, 50 gas. Yeah, okay, so he's not gonna get it. Now, this isn't the first time I've seen this. Some Terran players are experimenting with an interference matrix-less, that's hard to say, Raven, or Ravens. But I am glad to see that he actually gets it, because I don't really believe in that. You know, Clem was doing it, right? And I remember this because I was even wondering, does Clem know he's supposed to get the upgrade? And I think he did. I think he does. But he was experimenting with both TVP and TVT. Matrixless. There's no easy way to say that. Ravens. But it's such a powerful upgrade. It's why they have locked it behind an upgrade at this point. That is cheap and quick and off of a tech lab you already get for a Raven anyway. Akira now has triple Raven. 2 tanks to 2 tanks. Bunny going for his own 3rd Raven as well, but a little bit later. Gonna be a little less on the energy. Stim is faster once again for Cure, but it's way more about this tank Raven Viking push at this point, which Cure is grabbing Vikings. Once again, Bunny later to them, if not at all getting them. Looks like he's going to swap over to grab some, but they're going to be much later to this battle. Too late, in fact, as Cure already marches in. 1 Raven for Bunny, went for the harassment. So he's obviously in a worse position there. At least he has the tank come out. 3 tanks to 2, but, you know, maybe not for very long with Cure's Ravens looking at him. Kier playing it rather safe so far, just taking advantage of the area gained here to kill any buildings on the high ground, of which there are very, very few. Third CC is already done for Kier. That is the biggest benefit that he has, is on location. Good lord. That is bold, but that is something he is absolutely going to get away with, 100%. Bunny losing a couple more workers even. He's now down by 10 with his third CC, nowhere near completion. Certainly not going to be on location as long as Kira has this contain. And Kira is confidently rallying across the map. So far what he's seen is all of his opponent's defenses still back at home. There's no medevacs to fly across the map, so there's no danger to Kira's home base. So he is content right now to stay on the front lines. Now this eventually does have to back away. Eventually, the aggressor Terran has to acknowledge the defender's advantage and has to leave, which is exactly what Kira's doing here. Cycling to try and safeguard the retreat to a certain extent, but you can see how big Bunny's army is. He got those barracks up faster. He has 10 more Marines, and when they have stim, the concave potential is going to be huge, similar to the last game, actually, where Kira had it. And Bunny actually gonna get an opportune moment to jump on top of this third. Kira is trying to go and defend it. Will he be in time? His tanks will siege up, but how about the spells? Spells going down every which way. Kira's forward tanks are taken out of the equation, but then so are Bunny's. No one doing damage to anyone, as far as tank count. And Bunny's Marine count that was in his favor now depleted, and now even losing the frontline tanks as well. Kira realizing he could get a little bit farther forward. Bunny did not, and Bunny has just straight up lost the TVT battle. He has been unable to stop the third CC from mining. The main base now under attack. Kira looks to be losing a couple of SCVs, but he had some to give. And now he's just going to grab his opponent's Ravens. Completely fine on the front line, obviously, too, so no panic there. Kira still ahead by 11 workers, even after the Raven sacrifice. Kira just looking better in the TVT matchup, taking the battles better. Bunny, he wasn't a timer more so than his opponent, to be absolutely fair. He was. He knew that he was much later to his third base. He had the jump on what he could, but it didn't work out. And now Kira is a dominating army supply lead. It's difficult sometimes to kill your opponent in TVT, but Bunny's hardly even on 3CC. So this is usually one of the better opportunities to kill your opponent if you really are ahead. It's when the Terrans are on 3CC, perfectly saturated, double factory, pumping out tanks to safeguard massive amounts of area. That's when it gets really hard to kill each other. But we're not quite there yet. And Kira still has a Raven in his back pocket that he saved. And Viking control. So both also great things to actually break a Terran opponent. Here, looking for the opportunity, Bunny trying to deny him, kind of nipping some of these engagements in the bud while he still can, while the army supply is relatively close. That will change as Kira's economic victories start to hit his production. Faster to his double factory, faster to his fourth, faster to his 8 racks, or triple starport, whatever one he decides to go for, faster to the 2-2 upgrades, so on and so forth. Bunny deciding that his tank count is hopefully good enough to defend back at home. Does go for a double drop. This is definitely a tactic you want to put into your own arsenal in TVT. And if you really play it out perfectly, then it's more power to you. You get something on the map to make your opponent rethink being so aggressive. And if they're not so aggressive, then maybe you can, again, buy that time to get maxed out yourself. And then when you're both maxed out, yeah, you're very difficult to kill each other. Kira will have the better upgrades. He will have the air superiority. Liberators will eventually become a problem. There's still gains here for Kira, even if they both end up getting maxed, but ideally this drop does put a little fear into Kira's heart, but then also does a tremendous amount of damage. That would be the nice, gimme, please give me it. Missile turret from Kira is cheeky. I like it. It's so likely Terrans will shift queue medevacs down that path. Kira's fourth, now turning into a planetary, pushing away what looks to be the only double medevac drop on the map. It is not, though. Bunny has unloaded his, now running into Sense Tower range. Are there reinforcements back on Kira's side of the map? Absolutely, but maybe not enough. Sensor Tower is all that Bunny grabs. Gonna play it safe here. And yeah, I think that was a good call, actually. Because he's gonna have to stim, like, again, probably very soon. Yeah. +1 vehicle weapon's already done for Kira, too. Not working on +2 quite yet, which is the actual kill shot difference, but there you go. Now, 16 Marines gonna head into the main of Kira, but Kira was 100% on top of this. Not with missile turrets, just with army. Reinforcements came back there. He does still have, well, not 20 more army supply than his opponent. That's all in workers, so Bunny's army does have a bigger supply, but right now the problems would be on those upgrades. 2-2 only halfway done for Bunny. He will take out this planetary lickety-split, and the Marines in the main base are still doing some damage. Third base also could maybe, no, probably not under attack, actually. Kira has Liberators and tanks siege up on the high ground, and Bunny's attack is really lopsided. He decided not to go for the pincer move with the drop, but rather go into the main base on top of his opponent's tanks, but that does not work out. Meanwhile, Kira was, of course, entering into Bunny's main base. So that is GG. Kira will take the 2-0, move on to the round of 8. Pretty easy fashion, too. In favorite now that Maru is gone. And Bunny will have to fight one of those two Protosses that I just talked about. Let's now watch that PvP and see who falls out of the round of 16 first, or who has a second chance at life. We're now in the loser's match for GSL Group B. In the top right, it is Nightmare. In the bottom left of Solaris, it is Stats. Now, a lot of people are going to be cheering for Stats. I think a lot of people were cheering for him at the GSL. He's still a very popular name, despite going to the military. No one really forgot him. And in fact, a lot of people were hoping he would make the comeback, because Protoss desperately needed some more representation. But also because everyone loved him. You know, Stats boys. He is performing well enough, but in PvP, sometimes playing defensive can get you in more trouble than not. It's not exactly a matchup where you can just do the same thing, especially defensive macro-wise, and expect to, well, win every single time. In a way, Max Pax kind of does, though, to be fair. But it's a very weird way. It's a very different way that no one else copies, so, you know, forget about that for a second. I'm trying to say that Stats, you might be the fan favorite, but Nightmare, probably a little feistier? I feel like feisty is a good word here. A little feistier when it comes to PvP. Stats may have it in him to do a couple of cheeses, a couple of all-ins, because I think you really have to be in PvP top level form. But Nightmare might have a little more oomph. Might be a little sharper. And so I'm a little afraid for Stats, honestly, because I guess I gotta be honest, like, I'm kind of cheering for him too. I'm actually rather neutral between these two Protoss players. That might sound like sacrilege, but that's kind of the case. Everyone knows my favorite is Hero. And then Creator's, you know, pretty cool too, especially his emotions. But anyways, I guess if I had to pick one that I was more favored towards, it would be Stats. I mean, he's definitely a key figure in StarCraft's history. Whereas Nightmare, you know, definitely got the representation, the recognition, that's the word I'm looking for, that's the word I'm looking for, the recognition of being a strong candidate for, you know, potential new Protosses. Never really reached that same, you know, height potential, but definitely still a fun Protoss to watch because he can be aggressive. So it's like, you get the history on one side, but then you got the fun factor on the other. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who I'm actually cheering for. Like I said, I'm about like equal between the two, but I know a lot of people are cheering for Stats. It just is very difficult for Stats' play style to necessarily work out every single time in PvP. Now, it also could be argued that if you're going to be aggressive in PvP, it can also be a little more gambly, but I don't know. Aggression, especially in Korean Protoss versus Protoss, does seem to be the ticket more often. But I couldn't tell you the actual stats behind it, obviously. And Nightmare is not actually being particularly aggressive, despite going for a 4-stalker opener, which can lead to 6, which can be leading into a proxy pylon and a 4-gate, and no, nothing actually happened. Stats is able to kill Nightmare's probe, too, which is actually pretty brutal. I guess they both kill each other's probes. Okay. Never mind. So everyone's killed everyone's pro, but I guess Nightmares went down first. But Nightmare was able to see, Statsar is able to see both pylons, gets hallucination quickly anyway. Nightmare was able to see both pylons, and now is checking the front lines, which show a nexus. So easy peasy lemon squeezy. Everyone knows what they're doing, and most likely, the next step for both parties is going to be into that Twilight Council. That's something that only Stats 100% knows. But Nightmare going into the 2 centuries after the 4 Stalkers will eventually get his own hallucination to see, in fact, that it is Twilight Council. And we'll probably scat any timing for particularly quick Dark Shrine, but I just wouldn't expect it from Stats anyway. And this type of PvP where they both expand off of a fairly safe opener. Not really expecting a lot of surprises, just because there are so many hallucinations that can be thrown out. PvP can be tricky, and proxies can still exist, and you can miscount the pylons, intentional trickery with pylon counts. Yeah, okay, sure, but there's gonna be so many hallucinations. And as long as you're checking that no one is doubling down on gateways or aggression, then there's not really a need to stockhold the sentry energy, is there? I do love that Nightmare is really intent on scouting everything, though. He's got 2 Stalkers literally just scouting around every which way. So he knows about the lack of anything on the corners of the maps. Third Nexus coming down for Stats. Nightmare should be almost identically timed, because no one has made the moves towards... Well, okay, Nightmare adds on a Robo faster, but that's actually a pretty safe play. Not necessarily aggressive. Stats adds on a couple more gateways after his 3rd Nexus. I guess Nightmare... What he has been doing, I didn't pick up on this actually, he has been warping in more often than Stats. So he's got 12 Stalkers actually, as they come across the map anyway, to Stats' 7, and that is a problem. Stats did not have his shield battery down and just lost the one that was building. 3rd Nexus will have to be canceled, and that is just the power. Thank goodness it was a cancel. That is just the power of always warping in. It's not that there's more gateways, it's just that there is more units. And actually... the 2 Stalkers scouting around for a Nightmare might have given Stats the wrong impression as to how many Stalkers were on the field. So every time you think that there's going to be too many hallucinations to actually do anything surprising or get such an edge like this, there's always something about PvP, isn't there? I'm not 100% sure that Stats, missed out on that. It's very possible he just didn't realize where the army wasn't tracking his hallucinations, but those couple extra Stalkers... even without a proxy pylon, a war prism, really making a big difference, continuing to make a big difference. 1 Nexus already canceled, 2nd Nexus is killed. Not canceled, and that is just... That's game over. I mean, it'd be different if Nightmare was very committed. If he was on 6 gateways, and this is why he's done this, I guess. Still delaying his own 3rd Nexus, but that's clearly not the case. He just warped in every round that he could get 2 gateways to warp in on. 3rd Nexus of his is finishing as I'm speaking, and he has a Robo, which, is still pretty safe. He got an Observer from it, otherwise didn't really do a whole lot, but there's really no fear here for Nightmare. Who could his Observer for any Dark Shrine shenanigans if Stats is trying to come back, which he definitely is at this point. And if he was really concerned about Stats' Stalker counterattack, because Stats does have more gateways, although very temporarily, I guess he did, then Immortal could have popped out, but it didn't even look like Nightmare was really scared about that. Stats 4 gateways now matched by Nightmares, didn't really give him that much of a boost of Stalkers anyway. Stats so lower on the count here. Nightmare was taking some of this engagement away from the shield battery, but it didn't really end up mattering. Stats is just behind in every single way that we look. He's behind in army, he's behind in workers. He is going to be ahead in upgrades, but I believe that is Nightmare's decision to forego the Forge in favor of more gateways and a War Prism to go ahead and try and win game 1 of this PvP. And Nightmare taking a blink battle in the middle of the fight, which Stats, surprisingly enough, is also taking. I'm thinking he is aware he's gonna lose it? Well, no, he's... okay. I was wondering if that was just the, why not trying to blink battle just for funsies before you tap out, but he might have actually thought he could have won that. That was 100% not the case, though. And now he's at far too few Stalkers to try and even utilize Overcharge to his advantage. Out of position as well, so the Overcharge and the Natural not going to be available anyway. Yeah, this is game over. Nightmare. Well, that little twist, you know, just warping in more consistently than stats. The stats did go for the 4th Nexus, 400 minerals plus the pylon plus the shield battery. Invested into that. And Nightmare not doing that, warping in every chance that he got, was able to get a cancel, and the cancel was one thing. But the kill on the 3rd Nexus on the other side, that was the real nail in the coffin. And then just following it up with some more aggression. GG's. Stats now in his last life in the GSL. In the top right, we have Nightmare. In the bottom left, we have Stats. Map is... Give me a second. Alcyone. Not sure that'll ever roll off the tongue. So Stats, playing the more defensive macro style. Not from the get-go. They both played those 2 gateways into Nexus, although Stats still played the more macro version, I guess. Sentries coming out faster. Regardless. Then was caught in the potential trap that I was thinking of, which is that he would go macro defensive and Nightmare would go aggressive, and then Stats would not be able to hold up to it. Now, that was a little bit more of a blunt force type of situation, not necessarily a whole lot of trickery, aside from I made units and you didn't. There wasn't an issue of pylon counting or probe denial or hidden proxy gateways not being scouted. I mean, it was just I delayed my 3rd and you did. So, you know, yeah, a little bit straightforward in that department, but nonetheless, still ended up going the way that I thought it would between these 2 personalities and playstyles. Although I don't know much about Nightmare actually, but Nightmare playing typically more aggressive, Stats playing more defensive. And if Stats' shield battery was done at his 3rd, although it wouldn't have an overcharge, still might have been enough to hold on to that first 3rd Nexus and not have to cancel it. Hard to say, because his army positioning still would have been questionable with it being choked in with the setup on that map compared to Nightmare's Concave, but it would have been a lot closer, that's for sure. But then the not cancel on a 2nd, 3rd Nexus, that was just devastating. And just really an unforced error from Stats. I don't believe there was much else going on. Maybe he was looking at hallucination he had sent across and was trying to find the army. Oh shit, it's over there. You know, sure, but that's pretty inexcusable for this level of play. And by inexcusable, we don't say, you know, it can't happen amongst these guys. It does happen. It's just that it's inexcusable in that you should die after such a huge mistake. You should be taken down. And Nightmare did take him down. The Stats is once again going into Stalker Sentry opener, really the most macro opener you can do. That Sentry investment just delays anything potentially like technology based, right? The 100 gas that goes into it's going to really delay Stargate, Twilight Council, Robo. But then also as a fighting unit, it's not particularly impressive either. So if you were to do some type of big brain Sentry opener, Stalker Sentry, which is what Stats is doing, but then actually proxy a 3rd gateway. I mean, maybe maybe it could work actually, but you just have such poor fighting units, especially if Nightmare were to, for instance, go for his 4 Stalker opener again. He didn't. He has 2 Adepts, which aren't necessarily fighting units, but they are when they're up against Sentries. So the Adepts want to get into the main base, they want to kill probes, but if they also can grab the Sentries, that's fantastic. So far, not able to do that, though, and actually getting caught by Stats as 2 Stalkers, so one of them going to get injured. In fact, might even go down. Nah, not going to be chasing that far. Nightmare Stalkers were ready to back them up. Both players now getting a Nexus, but Nightmare did delay his in favor of the Stargates, which Stats' safe opener gives him a very quick hallucination. We'll scout that with plenty of time to respond. It can still be a little tricky, just because you now have 2 bases to worry about, your front and your back, but Shield Battery would cover that single Oracle, or just 2 Stalker Warp-Ins from the now completed Warp Gate technology. Should do the trick. And honestly, with the Shield Battery at the front, you probably just put these Stalkers up on the high ground too, actually. Is that many units coming out from Nightmare? So the first Oracle not doing a whole lot, and no second Oracle, so Shield Batteries will complete the defense. Looks like Stats is thinking that there's not going to be a second Oracle. There's not going to be a first one either! Hello? Mic check? Hello? That was supposed to happen. Nightmare, thinking he could grab, I guess, the probes on the transfer, overstayed his welcome, didn't glide the way that he thought it would, didn't expect the number of stalkers, whatever it was. Loses his one and only Oracle. Complete failure on the opener for Nightmare. Good news for stats fans. Now, Nightmare still did skip, I believe, well, he skipped all of his sentries, so no sentries from Nightmare. So there's still a lot of gas that he could have put into a Twilight Council. I'm just trying to point out that his Twilight Council actually still remains faster than his opponent. His blink is 15, 20 seconds ahead. But nonetheless, Nightmare finds himself down 2 workers, and without all of that extra potential the Oracle gives you, Stasis Trap for defense, Revelation for scouting, and Pulsar Beam for harassment, which is limited with only a single Oracle, but is still technically possible, and at least 1 Stalker has to be put into the main base, for instance, to make sure the Oracle doesn't do more damage. All of that is now missing. And there's a reason that the Stargate opener can be very powerful, and Oracle can be very powerful. In this case, just... Oh, Egon. Stats is actually going to play a little bit of an aggressive maneuver himself. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, Stats is still grabbing a 3rd Nexus, but is also proxying a gateway. So what he's going to do is delay his technology as far as the Forge and the Robo is going to go. But if he doesn't need it, he doesn't need it. If he's going to go ahead and kill his opponent, then more power to him. Now, Stats' hallucination is revealing a very late 3rd Nexus of his opponent, so Stats might want to kind of hold off on being super aggressive, because Nightmare might actually be doing some type of 2-base emphasis, which is actually currently what's happening. Oh, but I was going to say, you don't usually go, like, all in on 3rd base, or 2 bases, sorry. In a PvP, it gets kind of weird. You do usually grab that 3rd Nexus, so Nightmare also finds the proxy. But it's a question of, like, before or after those additional gateways, before or after a large number of units have been warped in, like last game. But this is what was a Nightmare's plan. So he takes a 3rd at the gold. Now, it's still a later 3rd than Stats. Stats is already completed, but it is going to be more efficient. A gold, allowing Nightmare to get away with fewer probes, which is good news, because he is on fewer probes. Problem, of course, defending it once it's found out, and Stats will eventually put enough together to say, okay, what the heck is happening here, and then go check a gold base. It will eventually happen. Hallucination from him is not checking it so far, but continued no 3rd Nexus, and then scouting almost the entirety of the main and the natural. There's clearly something missing. He has not scouted something. Because if there's really no 3rd Nexus, and it really is a 2-base all-in, where are more gateways faster? Or... I don't know what else he would do on 2 bases. Like, fast Robo Bay? Not really a thing. I mean, clearly Stats is thinking that the gateways have been proxied or something, which is certainly a consideration. There might be a whole gigantic charge-lot army being built up over here with a mineral mined out for all Stats knows. So 3 shield batteries. An overreaction in this game, but not so much an overreaction that Stats has now fallen behind. And that's kind of the critical thing. Nightmare able to snipe an observer, going to the high ground, and a couple of probes also going to go down. Not too shabby, but it is 1 more soccer than you actually needed. So that's a bit of a mistake, and then the soccers are going to get trapped anyway. And, well, was that really worth it? 6 probes for 5 stalkers? No. No, it wasn't. 6 probes for 2 or 3 stalkers might have been, but now the real concern is that Nightmare's army supply does not look particularly impressive. 5 stalkers would have been huge for the defense. That might be incoming. Stats is going to take the Zelnaga, still not see the gold base mining, but eventually you'll see the little, like, sparkle. You know, whatever. +1 is almost done for both. Well, actually only for Nightmare. Nightmare is much faster. Charge is done for both players, though. Now, if Nightmare can buy enough time for that +1, that will more than make up for the 4 army supply difference. Hallucination still doesn't see it. Are you serious? Here we go. Yep, sparkle. Sparkle, boom, man. Alright, so there we go. And now Nightmare has to try and defend the gold nexus, but in a very awkward path. He's also not got his own immortal. That's something that Stats did bust out. It's going to help a lot in these mostly Stalker v Stalker battles. Although we are getting an increasing number of charge lots. Nightmare is trying to buy some time with, by the way, a bunch of charge lots. Speaking of, I don't know, it's like 12 going into the natural of stats. Is this actually the move, though? Nightmare missing a tremendous amount of army back at home. Only his Stalker is now in play. Stat's gonna recall, loses Warp Prism. It is a little bit awkward. However, Nightmare is about to lose that third Nexus, and yes, indeed, it will go down. Meanwhile, the Zealots of Nightmare did not do the damage warranting their sacrifice. That was at 12 Zealots, and they killed 5 probes and maybe some reinforcements. That was really ineffective. Because it didn't even buy all that much time, I would say. It was cleaned up rather quickly, rather calmly. Both players down +1 as well. Stats with a superb lead in the army supply. Nightmare once again trying to rely on some time-buying tactics. 4th Nexus for Stats under attack, but even if he were to lose it, which does not seem likely, he'd still be in an okay position, because Nightmare's still replacing his 3rd. Oh, okay, it is done, to be fair. To be fair, that probably would be considerable, but no, it still wouldn't make up for the 30 army supply difference. It'd be a very long time. Nightmare would have to kill 3rd and 4th. 4th and 3rd. Yeah, and then maybe. But never gonna happen. Now being sandwiched as well! Oh, at least he uses the Blink Forward to kill the Warp Prism, but that probably will not be enough. Stats with an amazing army here. So many charge lots, but more importantly, I would say the 2 Archons to the 1. Well, now 3. Nightmare with 3 Archons and 2 shield batteries does have a rather good defensive stance. But still making up for 40 army supply, especially as Stats continues adding on his own upgrade. Eventually we'll have that +2 if he even needs it to complete this game. I don't think he does. Overcharge can be waited out. No problem. And that's exactly what Stats is doing. Because otherwise, you know, he is working with 25 Zealots. Theoretically, 25 Zealots can waste their lives. Just like we saw Nightmares do in the natural here. 25 Zealots could go into, like, a choke into 4 or 5 Archons. It's not gonna be pretty. So that's the only way that Stats could ever throw this engagement. But it's not gonna happen as long as they're in a bit more of an open space. It shouldn't happen even if it isn't. Like, it's so unlikely. And there you have it. In fact, actually, Nightmare's Archon's kind of caught behind. It's not very effective. The Immortal of Stats also helping to chunk away the Archon's health from a safe distance is also nice. And Stats just has a better army supply than his opponent. So pretty easy peasy game. But Nightmare not able to take the battles or buy the time that I think was possible. Like, the potential was definitely there for Nightmare, even after he lost the first Oracle and it kind of started off bad. The gold base plus the charge lots being more effective, if he had split them or if they didn't get choked up like they did, I think there's a lot more effectiveness there. Then he could control the battle a little bit better. You know, he maybe could have saved his 3rd Nexus. Actually, only 5 Stalkers were there to kill it, so something could have happened there too. But Stats getting rewarded with a bit more of that straightforward play, despite his own proxy gateway. Because when he was like, okay, I'll be aggressive for once, and then he was like, wait a second, and then he just played it really safe and really calm, and it did reward him with game 2. But the series now set up 1-1, both players now on their last life. In the top left of Golden Ore, we've got Nightmare. On the bottom right, it is Stats. Stats was going to try and do something a little bit different, but then seeing his opponent do something very odd, was sort of forced to play on the straight and narrow. And Nightmare's odd play was looking like a 2-base all-in of some sort. Actually, was a gold-base play, but didn't really work out for him. Because at the time in which Stats had scouted it, I think there was still potential to defend it. Their army supplies weren't that different. But then Nightmare kind of gambled with the 12+ Zealot run by or whatever it was, and that was shockingly ineffective. I actually wish I'd gone back and watched exactly what happened, because that was pretty bad. And now it's game 3. Their last lives, down to the wire, stress at an all-time high. What's gonna happen here? Who's going to go to the decider match to face Bunny? Will it be a rematch between Bunny and Nightmare, or a new one with Stats? Time will tell. I said at the beginning of this PvP, I'm kind of favoring Nightmare just because I think the way that Nightmare plays can be such a... It's scarier. I don't know if it actually is better. There's definitely a lot of arguments and discussion that could be had there, but I think it is scarier than what Stats is doing. Because Stats was a particularly scary Protoss at his height because he was just so damn solid. It was scary in the idea that people would face him and realize there is no weakness. I cannot find the opening in this guy's armor, in his shield of ire. Oh god, what am I gonna do? But if you're not at your tip-top shape as that type of macro defender player, I just don't think you're as scary. You're just, you know, you're respected. They take you seriously. They're still scared of losing to you in general, but it's just not as threatening, as cutthroat, as I think Nightmare can be with his PvP. His kind of odd playstyle, like the gold base last game, could have really tripped another Protoss up far more. Or just his aggression like in the first game, which did trip up Stats. So that's where I'm coming from. I absolutely believe in Stats' ability to once again be the shield of ire, and Hero can be the sword of ire, and it's, you know, it's really fun when that happens, but I'm not sure he's quite there yet. Both players potentially looking towards a Nexus. Nightmare once again open up a Stalker. Stats definitely going for a Nexus with the Stalker Sentry opener. It can be a little more ambiguous with double Stalkers. You know, if we saw a probe out on the map, then that definitely would reveal an aggression. But, oh, it was double Adept opener again. Just completely missed that, sorry. So it's similar opener to last game then. 2 Adept, 2 Stalker, 2 Sentries. His Nightmare's opener. Maybe a little later to his Nexus with it. Stats going for it, really. The good old standard. Stalker Sentry, Stalker Sentry. And Sentry again. Twilight Council going to be coming down faster for Nightmare. Especially because he did not stop off on a Stargate. That was completely ineffective. That was, yeah, not the greatest. And also holding off on the additional Sentry and additional Stalker. The 2 Adepts did take some time, but they're pretty cheap. Also, in this game, they survived. The last game, I guess they survived, but they didn't have very good health. So this time around, not being chased down as well. First hallucination from Stats is on the way as he is still looking to catch the Adepts off guard. I'll explain the movement here. The Adepts playing particularly safe. Nope, they're going to reveal themselves. I'm gonna say a shade from there would probably not even reach the here. Like that's pretty, yeah. And now this shade will confirm the well, it already confirmed the Nexus to be honest, and this hallucination as well. More so confirming that the army is there, waiting and willing to catch the Adepts should they shade. And not worth the shade at this point. Good split from Stats. Blink on the way for both. Again, Nightmare is a little bit faster, being dumped into Chronos as well. Alright, Stats. Okay, he's also dumping Chronos into it. There's not much else, I suppose. But Stats is going for a 3rd Nexus. A little bit later than Nightmare's, actually. Nightmare had already queued his up. That's why he was missing the minerals. Wow, okay, so very much a macro PvP on Golden Aura. 3 base to 3 base. At this point now, it's a question of maybe who reaches towards a Forge a little bit faster, who delays the Robo even more. As, you know, both of them have obviously delayed it. No fear of Dark Shrine, no want of getting to Immortals. Supply block from Nightmare, whoops a pip, okay? But then so same as Stats actually. 62. It's harsh. There's the Forge there for Nightmare, revealing a little bit more of a macro play. Stats actually grabbing the gateways, which, you know, could be aggressive, but then also can be a sign of a little more hesitation in the matchup. I mean, in StarCraft 2, you have to be pretty confident in every single matchup, every single thing that you do. Wavering microsecond decisions that can impact, especially the higher you get up into the game, but usually the pros are pretty decisive. In this case, it might just be that safety that Nightmare feels like he doesn't need, or is gambling he doesn't need. And so Stats will have a slightly later Forge, maybe not later to the Nexus. He is once again finding himself lower on the Stalker counts, which is a little awkward, but he does have the high ground at this point. Kind of late into the battle, though. blink forward aggressively. You gotta be careful here. You don't know what Nightmare is actually coming up with. Adepts in the natural of Nightmare as well, however, so Stats might get an opportunity. He is still taking the battle in the middle, though, and I think he's losing it at this point, although Nightmare's not using all of his stalkers. I guess both of them were dealing with some Adepts in the natural, to be fair, but Stats is the one that's doing a little bit more damage. That's gonna be 6 probes killed, maybe a 7th. A scout into the main base as well. Nightmare just safely falling back to the 3rd base. Shield battery. He is down now by 6 workers, so Stats has a lead there. But then Stats was later to his Forge, was later to starting the +1, later to his Robo as well. If Nightmare get an Immortal, that could help out. And also mess up his shield battery. Whoops, so he can't transfer his probes. He's actually not mining all that much more than his opponent, despite having a good probe lead. Charge will start up faster for Nightmare too. And the Robo is not going to give Nightmare any amount of Immortals by looks of things. And in fact, I don't even know if he has an Observer. Okay, he has 1 Observer. Just about to scout the Adepts. But that +1 being, what, 30+ seconds faster could be huge. And that gateway count that Stats had faster didn't really amount to very much, right? Nightmare was able to add on his gateways at a later time and still be pretty safe. Giving him that slightly faster Forge, slightly faster +1, suddenly that impacts one of these battles that's upcoming. Could be the big difference maker. That and the faster charge. If Sats had been able to use 4 gateways to 2 to do something to this 3rd base, then that would have been good use of that build, of that choice, but nope. Stalker's gonna recall up in the top right. Stats grabs a slightly faster 4th base. Is Nightmare even gonna grab one? Once again, supply blocks, by the way. Not his best game ever, perhaps. He is gonna grab his, by looks of things. That +2 starts up lickety splits. And so he will hold on to at least like a 20-second lead. Stats investing into his Templar Archives will have faster Archons. But Nightmare shouldn't be too far behind in that department. Should be adding his on very soon as well. Even up the work account, I'm guessing, okay. My numpad isn't working. There we go. I'm guessing we're gonna have, yeah, we do have a spike for Stats in the income, but overall pretty similar. A little bit of scuffle battles in the middle. Both players' charge is gonna finish up. +2 again. Enough ahead for a Nightmare to impact a battle. That's definitely possible. This has been the most macro game so far. First game 3 as well. Templar Archives does finally finish for Nightmare. Didn't find himself up against Archons. Now both of them are adding on High Templars. Stats is going for the Warp Prism first. Nightmare is going to have that +2 attack, though, first, actually. So if they're going to have an upcoming battle, Stats might be doing a little anti-timing unknowingly to him. He's not sure about the +2 timings. 4th base already done for Stats. He does have now a heavier, better, stronger economy. A little lower on the gas, though. Just noticed he never took his 5th gas, whereas Nightmare did. Or, no, he skipped his natural gas. Oh, no, but so did... Yeah, okay, yeah. So Nightmare's going to be able to afford a few more Archons. And as much as Zealots can be effective, there's, I think, a certain amount that just become less efficient, I guess, is what it is. You know, if you attack into a defensive Protoss with shield battery and Archons, and you have 30 Zealots compared to 21, is that really going to be enough? Is that really going to make a difference? I'm not so sure. But 9 Zealots could be used to go for, like, a counterattack, although this has been really awkward. Nightmare jumping forward into battle, letting the Zealots on top of his Stalkers. He does kill his opponent's Warp Prism, though, and has his own, and actually will be winning this battle. The +2 would finish for both parties, so that wasn't the contributing factor. Nightmare, with the decision to engage, his boldness pays off in a big way. Stats forced to retreat desperately back to his shield battery. Shield battery to the 4th base as well, but he is now down 30 whopping supply. That battle went really poorly for him. And now he's away from his shield battery anyways. Probably the worst possible battle that he could take. Very questionable there. Shield battery overcharge almost dissipating at this point. Archon, holy shit. Saved technically by the Warp Prism, but that does get done down. And now Nightmare still with his offensive Warp Prism warping in, saving his own Archons. No more emergency shield batteries for Stats. Stats is going to fall out of the GSL round of 16. Fortunately, taking one particularly bad battle in this game. I'm actually going to rewind and see just exactly why it went so freaking poorly. The Stats is once again on his last stands. And since it is his last game here, probably, we'll go ahead and watch it unfold. With half the army supply, losing his shield batteries and static defense. He's dead. Because the Warp Prism finally dies of Nightmare, but that's not really the biggest issue. GG. There you have it. Nightmare will move on to face Bunny in the decider match. And that will be a rematch. But I absolutely wanted to take a look at that battle. Because initially, it kind of looked like... You know, Stats was looking for the battle. Whoops. Wrong buttons. I guess they both kind of were surprised, to be honest. All right, so... Alright, actually, the very start of the battle was favorable to Nightmare, because of the +2, I guess. But, what's the stats? Very even on the army supply. 3 Archons for Nightmare is definitely good. Those 8 more Zealots, like I was trying to analyze. Like I was trying to say, 8 more might not help you in direct battle. Because the Archon Splash still overwhelms, or they're still choked up, they don't get a great concave, whatever it is. But they might be able to be helpful in terms of going for run-bys and distractions and backstabs. Or if they do manage to get the perfect surround, well then that is helpful. But I guess we had the Zealots really as stacked up as they possibly could be. Kind of for both sides, though. But then the extra Archon does seem to weigh heavier. 6 extra Stalkers. Definitely more microable. But then they blinked forward so aggressively. Guess you had Stats with some Zealots not really helping. Stalker blink forward seemed so aggressive, but I guess he was partially protected by his own Zealots at that time. And the Warp Prism getting taken down. Finally, the upgrades even up. So many Zealots, I guess you can see, not really doing a whole lot for Stats. And these 3 Archons are now all getting shots in. A little juggling from the Warp Prism as well. Really highlights how important the Warp Prism living was. And then the Stalkers, because they had that line of Zealots in front of them, were actually able to get Blink back off of cooldown, and then both Warp Prism juggle and Blink back, I guess. And then, of course, the Warp Prism actually reinforcing. Stats did have a Guardian Shield, but it was so Zealot-based, I guess it doesn't really matter. A very interesting battle. You know, I definitely had to go back and slow that one down to see exactly how that went so well for Nightmare, because it was so even. It was so freaking close. Army supply-wise, the 5 seconds with the +2 was helping Nightmare, but not Stats. You know, I think in many other battles would not have been enough to turn the tides. But then this battle literally ends with a almost 30 supply difference. It was that decisive, despite looking so close when they both went to battle each other. Oh, GG's. Nightmare moves on to face Bunny for the rematch. Let's go. Our final best of 3 for Group B. In the top right of Alcyone, it is Bunny. In the bottom left, it is Nightmare. I can get Hecate, but it should be pronounced Alcyone. Alcyone. It's not the way it's supposed to. So Nightmare, in for the rematch. Was this the map where they had the epic struggle? No, it wasn't. But anyway, in for the rematch. He did not have a particularly great game 1 against Bunny, but then game 2 was like a roller coaster, actually. Like, it was theoretically... Well, it was, not theoretically, it was very close. Extremely close. Theoretically, bad for Nightmare, then good for Nightmare, and then bad because he lost it. But then, even at the very end, I really do contest that if he had just brought the Warp Prism back, with the 6 zealots that he would have probably won. It's very hard to say, but it would have looked better. It would have looked better. But I would say, certainly, that it didn't start off great for Nightmare. So it actually looked like it was setting up for a Bunny 2-0, and then it did. But then there's just the roller coaster in that game, too, that made you kind of wonder. You're like, oh, yes, no, maybe so. So overall, I think Bunny is favored. I said that before, but then again, with their previous best of 3, I'd say Bunny is favored. Now, there is a rematch curse in GSL. I don't care if the facts don't back me up. I think it exists. But I would say this is not contested enough between the 2 players. Maybe that sounds rude to Nightmare. I don't know, but that's what I'm feeling. I don't think Bunny is going to succumb to the curse. And that'll be 2 Terrans moving on out of this best of 3. But we'll see. We got a factory expand coming out here. Bunny, he liked his Widowmine drops. And perhaps most importantly, Nightmare looked a little weak to the Widowmine drops in game 1. So, you know. If your opponent's weak against something, you do it again until they prove they're not weak against it. It's not going to be Widowmine, though. It's going to be a Cyclone, at least initially, but there is an Armory on the way, so I do believe this will go into Widowmines. Heck yeah. Bunny's going to prove that they really should be nerfed. In case you missed all of the Reddit threads. The community has decided to rally against the Widowmine threats, which, frankly, I think is actually coming kind of out of nowhere. Like, it was like a 10% complaint level before the patch, and now it's like a 100% complaint level, so that's what I mean by out of nowhere. It's getting pretty insane. But anyway, Bunny is looking to abuse the Widowmine. His Reaper is still in the main base. Cheeky, waiting as long as possible to get the perfect scout. There's one thing to see a Twilight Council and say, okay, well, it could be 2, 3, or 4 gateways. I don't know. And another to say 100% that was 4 gateways, because I had to wait that long. But Bunny does finally pull the trigger here. He's going to see a shield battery in the main base and kind of go, pfft. Oh my god, Widowmines. But then also see the Twilight Council. Just 2 gateways on the main base. You cannot get to the front unless the Cyclone decides to be adventurous, which the Cyclone just went to the middle of the map to deny Nightmare's fast sentry hallucination. Bunny, picking up perhaps on what Nightmare was putting down in their first series, game 1, is improved upon the build here in game 2. So now Nightmare has no idea what his opponent is doing. Absolutely zero. And as I said, the Cyclone could be a little more adventurous and see if there were 2 extra gateways up here, but it's not even going to bother. Not even going to bother. It's going to see 2 Stalkers come at it, get a lock on, and then run. Oh, mess up the lock on, actually. It is a very short distance at this point. And it's not even so much he messed up on it as much as it was you probably should have just evacuated. The old Cyclone could have taken this, for sure. But not the new one. But anywho, Bunny is now going to avoid the Xel'Naga since he no longer has the map control. And he should know. Yeah, no, he knows. So yeah, Nightmare is not going to get the benefit of that. Now, Nightmare still should be wary of a drop. I mean, that's why he built a shield battery in the main base. He has no idea what his opponent is doing. Didn't even know if it was a factory expand. Zero clue. But is just anticipating some type of drop. And if it was Hellions, the shield battery would be very, very helpful. However, it is Widowmines. Oh, only 2 of them going to unload. The 2 do get some decent shots, however, and the Robo has yet to produce an observer. Actually, it is coming right back now. It seems like it was heading across the map first, now realizing its mistake. Widowmine number 3, because the third one didn't unload. But this one now coming into the natural. Gonna take a very conservative burrow spot, just getting an extra probe there. Main base was, in fact, cleaned up. The sentry is looking a little vulnerable. You want to shoot you, but it's the sentry. You get one shot with Widowmine. Hello? I don't know, buddy. I don't know, but the woman's not burrowing. Here we go. Nightmare. Okay, Nightmare realized. Alright. You're good, Sentry. You're good. So, Bunny, that's his opener. That's his opener, man. He's gonna go for one more Widowmine drop, and then probably the rest of them will just be along with the main army. Combat shields has only just started. No, this should be the last Widowmine drop. To potentially get rid of even further medevacs as you head into more of the mid-game, I think is a little unnecessary. But these 4 Widowmines, they've got potential. The main base is now wide open. No stalkers there to defend. Oh, because the stalkers are over here. But wait a sec. Oh, no. Oh, no. Bunny getting so freaking lucky. Changing his attack path, though. I mean, that is a good thing to do. Hits the natural instead. Nightmare. No! The Widowmines! He just did not expect this natural to be under attack. 11 probes go down, 2 left in the natural, 2 now headed towards the 3rd, dividing up the observer. This Widowmine actually did survive, by the way. Gonna grab a couple more probes. And this is all just the appetizer to the main entree, that is the attack on the way. The observer will at least scout this, so Nightmare knows where to be, but he's already lost so many probes. And he might be losing even more. He's forced to recall, I guess, the observer here, but the Widowmines are gonna get the shot! 1 second too late. More probes go down. More Widowmines dropping up the 3rd, and now Bunny dropping in the main base as well. No protection still there. Everything is out of position at all times. Ay, ay, ay. The damage, the cries, the Protoss tears. I feel so bad. 29 workers have gone down. Nightmare down to a whopping 30. His army isn't terrible. It's backed up by a shield battery. It can defend, I would say, it's 18 army supply difference, but there's not even a shield battery at the 3rd. There's no shield battery and there's no army. Very small army of Bunny, to be fair, but it does take advantage of a completely undefended 3rd. Now it's defended, but it's still the threat that Nightmare can't necessarily deal with, and he's gonna tap out. So frustrating to deal against the Widowmines when they're all popping off in every single base, and the main army is probably inches away from collapsing in on you as well, so it does make sense. GG's. It's Protoss life, I guess. And a great start for Bunny, who is now 1 game away from advancing to the round of 8. Game 2 here. Nightmare in the bottom left of Solaris. In the top right, we do have Bunny. So, unfortunately, Nightmare not looking any better, and in fact, well, worse against Bunny in the rematch here. Now, you can quickly look worse against Widowmine play, just because half a second late reaction can be the difference of 2 probes killed versus 10. So, yeah, it is drastically worse, but then the actual overall skill level necessarily isn't worse. It just is, half a second even, which is, not a point in favor of the Widowmine, that's for sure. Not to get too dragged down into these conversations, but yeah. It is what it is, and unfortunately for Nightmare, what it is a game where you didn't even get to play. They kicked over your sandcastle while you were still building it. It's not fun. And what's even worse is that now you're in your last life after a frustrating opener and continued revealed weakness to a Widowmine opener too. So it's really a few kicks in the nuts, it's a few, not even just one. So Nightmare is really up against a challenge. And I'm not sure he's going to be up for it. He could try and be the aggressive one first again, which I think he was on this map. This was the one we proxy gated, yeah. Because I think that's a decent way to at least get potentially the ball rolling for you. Sure, if it does go well. But then also kind of forces the Terran to change up their build order, depending on, what exactly they were planning on doing. So if the Terran was factory expanding and you proxy gate, well, that actually might not change it too much. But they'd still have to get maybe a Cyclone instead of going right into the reactor for the Widowmines and the Hellions. So that would still technically change it, but it probably wouldn't be worth it. As the factory expands a little bit safer. If they're going to 1-1-1 after 1x expand, like Bunny is doing, then that might be worth it, because it does get the ball rolling in your favor, and then they have to really change up how they respond. And that's theoretically what was supposed to happen in their first game when they played on Solaris. Bunny was completely blindsided by the proxy gate with his relatively greedy opener, I guess, just compared to a factory expand. And it still didn't work. So Nightmare, I guess at the end of the day, you think through all these things that I just talked about, and it's like, it's not really worth it, is it? Especially because at this point in time, Bunny's going to be scouting for that. Which he absolutely did. So you don't really get a chance to say anything in the early game. You're not really going to get a chance to necessarily interrupt their build order. You could threaten a 4-gate, which is exactly what Nightmare did again last time they played on this map. And so if the Widowmine drops aren't effective and the follow-up is not super concrete, their tanks aren't perfectly positioned, the bunker isn't, you know, well placed, units don't protect, like whatever it is, then maybe the 4-gate could work because they spent so much time Widowmine dropping you, but again, that did not work the last time. So what does Nightmare have to do? Nightmare has to be probably worried about potential Widowmine drop play and probably about potential 3-racks play, although it's a little less popular nowadays, and then also about everything else Terran can throw at them. Now this helps. This reduces the amount of things you have to worry about. The Adept gets in the main and sees that it is, in fact, a 1-1-1. Raven on the way, no doubt, with the tech lab on the starport. You'll take that. You'll take that. Nightmare is, in fact, 4-gating on this map, but speaking of scouts, Bunny also gets into the main and sees 4 gateways, all of them in the main base. Unfortunately, you're going to lose probes 2 to the Hellions, so that's not great. And, well, now they both know what's up. But I would say this generally favors the Terran, who's pretty well set up to defend a 4-gate anyway. That is to say, like, they have the tools necessary to defend the 4-gate. They're not stuck going into some, like, weird 2-1-1 or 16... I don't even know. I don't even know, actually, what else they would be doing. As long as they can start up their tanks on a factory with a tech lab, that puts them in a pretty good position. The Raven is helpful as well. Even though it's not the most helpful, the auto turret can help. So, some Terran players would play it pretty safe and grab a second bunker at the front. Wouldn't mind it. Bunny, apparently not too worried. They also might start walling in this tank a little bit, so the Stalkers, when they blink forward, they can't just walk out. But it looks like Bunny is not very threatened by Nightmare's 4-gates. Technically having won against it the last time this happened, but that was a very odd game. It's starting a little bit of a wall, but now we're going to get the blink into the main base. Bunny's second tank is not quite out, and the blink is about to happen. Adept's also trying to get some damage in the natural done at the same time, trying to split the attention of Bunny's reinforcements. The Stalkers blink into the main where it's all nice and safe. They have plenty of room to maneuver, which means they're not attacking anything particularly dangerous. So the tanks will re-maneuver. One of them will go down. Second one gets sieged up. Will get 2 shots. I think I just only got the 1. But the Marines were attacking away during the entire time. The Adept shooting on top of the tanks were actually all that helpful. And the Stalker numbers have been depleted, 6 of them having gone down. Now, trading off for 2 tanks could be worth it if this does actually end up snowballing, but the Stalkers have yet to start taking away the numbers of Marines. Auto turret once again helping even just the tiniest amount. It does still help. And the Marines look like they might just be able to overpower the Stalkers, many of them very low on that health, forced through the Warp Prism Micro as well as the Blink Micro. And it looks like the Marines will hold the high ground. Just barely, to be fair, but... And this is a Bunny move right there. He's like, oh, only 8 Marines in a tank? Let's pick up the 8 Marines and go across the map. That is so freaking dangerous. Yeah, the Stalkers are very injured, so blinking on top of the tank would probably not happen. But I don't know, man. That's still so freaking dangerous. But it's gonna be rewarded. Bunny is not going to lose much, if anything, in the main base. We're down to just the 4 Stalker harassment squad, which isn't all that scary. And you can see the Marines getting healed through that anyway. And then the medevac drop will go ahead and unload in the main. Nightmare completely unaware of this. Oh, no. 8 Marines, stim on in. The recall should be instant. And indeed it is. 2 probes go down, cancel pylon. But, oh, the Stalkers! What is that recall? That recall was terrible. 4 Stalkers... Even if they weren't right on top of the Marines, still probably wouldn't have been enough. They had a micro perfectly. The Zealots come in, but they're not charge lots, and now I guess everything combined together will push this away, but that was more awkward than you expected, than I expected. Well, the Stalkers were the harassing ones too, so they just stopped harassing entirely. Third CC on the way for Bunny. Extra barracks as well as Stim has already been done for a while. His combat shields have yet to start. That's the one weakness so far from Bunny. Otherwise, he is kicking butt. He's up 6 workers. He's up an army supply. He saves his medevac drops. He's got 1-1 on the way, where Nightmare still does not have any forges. Nightmare was going for that kind of mass charge lot, Archon, potentially Storm play. Yet again, that he did in game 1 of their last series, which I think is just not going to work out for many of the same reasons that I talked about after the last series. It's just not a very powerful playstyle when you've been hit so much so often on your economy. The one thing it has going for him is that little power spike, where the charge lot numbers are surprising to the Terran and the Storm is surprising, but we don't have Storm, by the way. But that's stuff's not here. Nightmare has lost way too much. So Bunny very confidently strides on in. Charge lot numbers are not all that intimidating. This is before the upgrades are done for the Terran, but it will not matter by the looks of things. Or maybe it will. I think with that +1, those Zealots get deleted much faster. The tank also going to get taken down finally. So, I mean, Nightmare does have one promising fight. Perhaps, again, that power spike that I'm talking about, but even then, it's hardly a power spike. It was just barely enough to match the level of Bunny, because Bunny kind of pulled the trigger maybe a little bit aggressively. He was combat shields was straight up late, so that probably should have been there for the battle, and then his 1-1 also, or at least his +1 attack, could have been completed if he had been 5 seconds later. So, I think that's the only reason it looked as okay as it did, and still, it's not okay. It is not okay. A little Zealot drop will kill the tank, but unfortunately the Warp Prism now under fire. Okay. He's gonna survive. Nightmare's trying to dissect the Terran, attack him where his army isn't, but it's not really working out, and when the army is here, the Terran's army is just so much better. 1-1, combat shield, stim, medevacs, no Marauder slow quite yet, but that's on the way. All of that's gonna beat Nightmare, no problem. It's a numbers game at this point. There is no hesitation from Bunny when he takes these fights. Storm changes that, but only if you have Storm, and ideally a Warp Prism to put the High Templars in for protection. That Warp Prism did just get destroyed. It's gonna have to remake it. Pretty expensive, honestly. 275 minerals. Nightmare is on a 4th base or close to it, but his economy has never been better. Pretty sure it's never been better. Okay, there's one spike, I guess. But otherwise, look at the red. Look at the red on the income advantage. Ay, 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 ay. You just can't make enough Zealots, I would say, off of that. You're going to need to, once again, have those Storms hit the dead center of the army. Already one High Templar getting killed, though. Not a great start. Again, upgrades favorable for the Terran. These Zealots are made out of tissue paper. One Storm is hecka good. Then the second Storm, not too bad either. And the Terran army, a little disjointed. Zealots are getting a couple of swipes in, but is it going to be enough? Not by the looks of things. So much Terran left over. So many medevac ceiling as well. The last Storm is on the dead center of the Marines, but just barely healed up enough to survive that. Means that Bunny still has a good amount of army on the front lines. He is not defending his 3rd. It looks like he just gave up on it, just pulled the SCVs away, but it doesn't really matter. He knows he's about to win the game, and he's just going to go for it. Shield Bounty Overcharge about to go away as well. And how many Storms do we have? 1 High Templar, 50 seconds away from having Storm. Actually, make that 70. I got EMP'd. Possibly again. And this is going to be it. Bunny with the 2-0 over Nightmare yet again. And this time to actually make it into the round of 8 of GSL. Both Terrans gaining victory here today. But I will once again say, I believe both Terrans were favored to win. Nightmare not eager to tap out. I mean, this is last life after all, but with Bunny now taking his 4th base, I think the Protoss might be dead. I think he might be a goner. I think there are more medevacs than Zealots. That ain't good. There you go. Little snipe to help out too. Yeah, there it is. GG's. Bunny, 2-0. Nightmare, another 2-0. Nightmare, another decider match. GG's. Bunny and Cure move on to the round of 8. Nightmare and Stats will have to hope that GSL returns in the year 2024. That is how long they're going to have to wait. Hope you guys enjoyed the cast, even as late as it was. And hopefully I'll get a little bit faster, at least into the next matches, but it is what it is. So round of 16, Group C, there we go, will be coming up soon. Hopefully sooner rather than later. And as always, please like, subscribe, follow, all the good stuff. And I'll see you guys later for more StarCraft. Bye!